Chapter 3998 contained a lot of ambergris. Li Zhuangji was so angry that he almost died. He never expected Yun Chujiu to bring a boat out. He shouted sternly, "Yun Chujiu, you have to think carefully. What you are doing now is running away at the last minute. You will definitely be punished when you return to the sect." Yun Chujiu laughed lightly. "It is better to be punished than to die. I hope you can still live to return to the sect." As Yun Chujiu spoke, she directly steered the ship to return, completely ignoring Li Zhuangzi's furious roar from behind. Chen Bufan braced himself and said, "Senior Brother Li, 2 out of the 7 of us are missing. This mission is too difficult. Why don't we return as well? Anyway, if the sect asks, we can just push the blame onto Yun Chujiu." Li Zhuangzi gritted his teeth. If it weren't for Elder Wan's promise, he would have been happy to return. But if he couldn't get the ambergris, wouldn't his position as a successor disciple be gone?
And so,
he said, "Don't worry about them. We'll arrive at the Blood Sand Island in half a day. We'll see how things go first. You must know that if we get the ambergris, not only will we be able to complete the sect's mission, we'll also make a lot of money." On one hand, Chen Bufan and the others did not want to offend Li Zhuangji. On the other hand, they were driven by greed. Therefore, they nodded and continued to sail in the direction of Blood Sand Island. As they got closer and closer to Blood Sand Island, the wind and waves became stronger and stronger. Fortunately, their ship was strong enough, so it was not a big deal. They could see the blood-red beach of Blood Sand Island from afar. "Oh my God! Senior Brother Li, look. Those seem to be ambergris." Chen Bufan said excitedly as he pointed at some brown objects on the red beach. Li Zhuangji took a closer look and immediately revealed an ecstatic expression on his face. "That's right, I've seen ambergris before. Those are indeed ambergris. Although the quality is average, there are so many of them. We're rich." The other 3 were also dancing with excitement. Haha, those 2 idiots, Yun Chujiu and Zhao Hui, actually gave up such a chance to strike it rich. What idiots! That's right. Not only did they miss the chance to strike it rich, they were even punished by the sect rules after returning to the sect. They really deserved it. The 5 of them were very excited. So when the big ship reached the shallow water area, they couldn't wait to rush to the beach. They didn't even put the big ship into their storage rings. Li Zhuangji rushed to the front of the largest ambergris, picked it up and said excitedly, "Ha ha. It's really ambergris. We're rich." Chen Bufan and the others were so excited that they couldn't even finish their words. They kept putting the ambergris into their storage rings, wishing they could put the entire Bloody Sand Island into their storage rings. However, while they were excited, they didn't notice that the ship that was originally docked in the shallow waters had sunk into the sea. Several scarlet eyes appeared on the surface of the sea, quickly approaching the beach. Li Zhuangji and the others finally noticed the abnormality, but when they looked up, they were scared out of their wits. They saw that the entire surface of the sea was covered by huge sea beasts. Pairs of scarlet eyes were greedily looking at them, and the ship that was docked in the shallow waters had long disappeared. Chen Bufan said with a trembling voice, "Yes, it's a level 64 bloodthirsty iron-skinned shark. What should we do?" Li Zhuangzi's face was also pale, but he still pretended to be calm and said, What are you afraid of? They are sea beasts. They can't climb onto the island." Another disciple said with a sobbing tone, "Although they can't do anything to us for the time being, our ship has been destroyed by them. We can't go back. If we knew this would happen, we would have listened to Yun Chujiu." Chapter 3999 Red Roots. When Li Zhuangji heard the disciple's words, although his heart was filled with regret, he said, "What's the point of saying all this? Do you still have any ships in your storage rings?" The remaining 4 people shook their heads. In the northern continent, a good ship was more expensive than a flying spirit tool, and they rarely came to the sea. Moreover, when they were on a mission, the sect would assign ships for them to use, therefore, who would prepare another ship like that pervert Yun Chujiu. They wished they could turn back time now. If they had the chance to do it all over again, they would run away with Yun Chujiu no matter what. In their panic, Even the ambergris on the beach lost its attraction. If they lost their lives, what was the use of these things? The bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks stared at them coldly in the sea not far away. They did not make any movements. When everyone was slightly relieved, they realized that as time passed, the tide began to rise. Chun Bufan said in panic, "Senior Brotherly, the tide is rising. What should we do? Why don't we go to the island and take a look?" Li Zhuangji gritted his teeth. The fisherman said that there were many terrifying sea beasts on the Blood Sand Island, but now they could only take a gamble. Therefore, he led Qin Bufan and the others away from the beach that had been continuously eroded by the sea water and into the low bushes. After walking for a while, nothing unusual happened. Li Zhuangzi's face regained some color. It seemed that the rumors could not be believed. There were no powerful demonic beasts on the Blood Sand Island. Chun Bufan said with a trembling voice, "Senior Brotherly, since it is still safe here, we should not continue to walk in." The other three nodded. Although there was nothing unusual at the moment, they recalled what Yun Chujiu had said before. The Blood Sand Island was strangely quiet. It was not a short distance for them to go, but they did not encounter a single sea beast or even a single spirit ant. It was too unbelievable. Li Zhuangji also lost his previous arrogance. Hearing that, he nodded. The five of them gathered some dry firewood, but when they were about to light the bonfire, they realized that they could not open their storage rings. This was not the worst part. They found that the spiritual power in their bodies had been completely confined. What was going on? After being stunned for a moment, the five of them looked at each other and ran wildly toward the beach. Even if they were facing those bloodthirsty iron-skin sharks, it was still much better than this kind of situation where they were at the mercy of others. However, blood-red roots suddenly jumped out from the ground, firmly entangling the five of them and dragging them toward the depths of the Blood Sand Island. The five of them struggled desperately, but all their struggles were futile. Fortunately, the roots did not strangle their necks. Otherwise, the five of them would have died long ago. Despair surged in the five of them. They could not survive. One of the disciples cursed, "Li Zhuangji, it's all your fault." Back then, Yun Chujiu said that she wanted to return, but you did not agree. Now we are all dead because of you. He was afraid of Li Zhuangji before, but now that he was about to die, what was there to be afraid of? Li Zhuangji was also very regretful in his heart, but what was the use of saying all this now? Could it be that he could do it all over again? After a quarter of an hour, the five of them were dragged to the center of the Blood Sand Island by their roots. When the five of them saw the situation around them, their faces showed fear and despair. Chapter 4000. The kindest woman in front of Li Zhuangji and the others was a thick and strong tree. The blood-red trunk seemed to have been watered with fresh blood. What frightened them the most was that there were many white bones scattered under the tree. Some were human, some were sea beasts, and no one knew how many there were. The five of them knew that they could not escape death today, but they did not expect that they would actually be killed by such a demonic tree in the end. What made them even more terrified was that the demonic tree actually let out a strange laugh. Another 5 people are here to die. TSK, their spiritual power is not low. It's enough for this lord to replenish it. Li Zhuangji roared with a stern expression. I advise you to let us go. Otherwise, once the sect finds out that we were killed, you won't be able to escape either. Blood Tree let out a hoarse and unpleasant strange laugh. Run? How could this lord be afraid of your so-called sect? Moreover, even if they came looking for me, they wouldn't find me. They would find out that this was just an ordinary island. Also, as long as I absorb some spiritual power, this lord will be able to escape the shackles of this island. When that time comes, who will be able to stop this lord? Although Li Zhuangji and the others were somewhat confused after listening to Blood Tree's words, one thing was certain. They definitely had no hope of surviving today. The 5 of them struggled with all their might, but their bodies were tightly bound, and they didn't have any spiritual power. There was no way for them to break free. The roots dragged the 5 of them to the Blood Tree's trunk. A crack appeared on the Blood Tree's trunk, emitting a thick smell of blood. Li Zhuangji and the others felt that the shadow of death had already enveloped them. At this moment, a chuckle came from not far away. I say, you shameless demon tree, why are you so desperate? Aren't you afraid that after eating these 5 trash, you will also become a trash? Li Zhuangji and the others were shocked to see 2 people standing not far away. They were Yun Chujiu and Zhao Hui. Li Zhuangji and the others were a little confused. Didn't Yun Chujiu and Zhao Hui already return? How did they appear here? Could it be that they had hallucinations before they died? Li Zhuangji bit his tongue and grimaced in pain. It seemed that this was true. At this moment, he had long forgotten about his past grudges. To him, Yun Chujiu was the savior who had descended from the sky, the only person who could give them a chance to live. Junior Sister Yun, why are you back? Save me. Save me. Li Zhuangji shouted at the top of his voice. Chun Bufan and the others were not any better. They were screaming at the top of their lungs. If they did not know, they would have thought that they had a good relationship with Yun Chujiu. Yun Chujiu sighed faintly. Senior brothers, I am the most soft-hearted person. I originally wanted to take Senior Brother Zhao and leave, but I couldn't just watch you guys die. So I risked my life and came here with full of enthusiasm. Aren't you all very touched? Li Zhuangji and the others were so touched that they cried bitterly. Although they felt that the possibility of Yun Chujiu successfully saving them was very small, they had to admit that they truly felt the warmth of humanity at this moment. They even secretly swore in their hearts that even if they couldn't live, they would do everything in their next life to repay Junior Sister Yun's kindness. In the past, they were simply blind. They actually felt that Junior Sister Yun was very annoying. Junior Sister Yun was clearly the kindest and most soft-hearted woman in this world. Chapter 4001. The Foil Bucket. Zhao Hui, who was beside Yun Chujiu, looked at Li Zhuangji and the others' crying expressions. When he saw Yun Chujiu's sorrowful look, his heart felt like it had been bawled out. Junior Sister Yun, is it really good for you to lie like this? We were clearly swept onto this island by a sudden storm. How is this what you mean by sacrificing yourself for others? Just as Zhao Hui was thinking, the blood tree interrupted his thoughts. The blood tree laughed strangely. What a heaven-sent opportunity. This lord originally thought that he would have to wait for some time before he could completely break free from this damn restriction. He did not expect that this lord would actually be given a great tonic, the heavenly thunder spirit root. Little girl, you really came at the right time. Yun Chujiu covered her stomach and laughed. It was so funny that Li Zhuangji and the others were dumbfounded. It was over. No wonder this little girl came to save them. She was crazy. Blood Tree was a little confused by the laughter. He said coldly, "What are you laughing at?" Yun Chujiu used her sleeve to wipe away the tears from her laughter. "Of course I'm laughing at you. I've never seen someone so eager to die. Did I really come at the right time? Yes, I'm here to take your life. I advise you to just kill yourself. Look at your wretched appearance. You're neither human nor tree. You're simply ugly to death. Also, your voice is horrible to hear. What's the point of living? You still call yourself this lord, bah, shameless." The branches of the blood tree began to shake, and the roots immediately lashed towards Yun Chujiu and Zhao Hui, wanting to trap them as well. Yun Chujiu curled her lips. "Senior brother Zhao, take out our treasure and show this ugly freak." Li Zhuangji and the others were surprised. Treasure? What treasure? Spiritual energy couldn't be used here, so where did Zhao Hui take out the treasure? Zhao Hui turned around and pulled out a cylindrical object from the grass. Seeing this, Li Zhuangji and the others were shocked. It was actually a foil bucket used to hold earth fire. Wasn't spiritual power not allowed here? How did Junior Sister Yun take out the foil bucket? Moreover, didn't she have to return the foil bucket to the bounty hall every time she completed a mission? Blood Tree obviously didn't recognize the foil bucket and continued to command its roots to sweep towards Yun Chujiu and Zhao Hui. However, it saw Yun Chujiu reveal a sinister smile and then use her hand to pull out the plug on the foil bucket. Instantly, wisps of extremely hot flames jumped out from the foil bucket. When Li Zhuangji and the others saw this, their faces revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. This was earth fire. Moreover, judging from the color of this flame, it should be the King Fire Essence Beast's earth fire. The 5 elements were mutually reinforcing and restraining each other. Wood was afraid of fire. This damned demonic tree was dead for sure. Their hearts surged with great joy. This kind of hope for survival made their entire bodies once again exude vitality. The earth fire sprayed onto the roots, and the blood tree immediately let out a miserable cry. This is earth fire. Stinky girl, where did you get it? Yun Chuju lifted the foil bucket and burned the roots with Zhao Hui as she said proudly, "Ugly freak, you really know your stuff. It's not a waste for my senior brother Zhao to carry this foil bucket through mountains and rivers. Come, let's make a deal. If you let those 5 trash go, they'll let you go. Well, cross the bridge and return to the road." Blood Tree said coldly, "Stupid girl, I'll count to 3. If you don't put down the thing in your hand right now, I'll kill these 5 trash. 1, 2, Yun Chujo bared her little white teeth. "No need to count. Just kill them. Anyway, it doesn't matter to me whether they die or not." Li Zhuangji and the others, junior sister Yun, what happened to loving and loving a family? What happened to not abandoning or giving up? What happened to the kindest and softest woman? Is it really okay for you to do this? Chapter 4002, Terms of Exchange. Blood Tree was also a little confused by Yun Chuji's words. Wasn't this wretched girl still righteous and self-sacrificing before? Why did she die now? Wasn't this change too fast? Blood Tree thought that Yun Chujio was holding on. It laughed strangely and said, "Wretched girl, don't think that you can deceive me with your words. I don't believe that you don't care about these people's lives. I'll give you one more chance. I'll count to 3. Why are you so indecisive? I'll help you count. 1, 2, 3. Okay, you can kill them all." Yun Chujio continued to burn the roots of the blood tree with the earth fire as she said with a smile. Blood Tree, it was really in a dilemma. These 5 trash were now its life-saving talismans. If it really ate them, this stupid girl would have no more scruples. What should it do? Blood Tree thought of something and sneered. "All right, I agree with what you said before. I'll let these 5 people go. You guys leave immediately and pretend that nothing happened." Yun Chuju nodded. "That's right. You let them go. I promise to take them away immediately. If I don't keep my word, I'll turn into an ugly monster like you." Blood Tree was so angry that he was twitching. He sneered and said, "I don't believe you. Give me the bucket with the earth fire, and I'll let them go." Yun Chujio blinked her eyes. "If you don't believe me, I don't believe you. How about this? I'll put the stopper on. As long as the 5 trash come to my side, I'll give you this foil bucket. What do you think?" Blood Tree sneered in its heart. It seemed that this stupid girl was just a little clever. As long as the foil bucket containing earth fire was controlled by it, none of these people would be able to escape. So it said, "Okay." Immediately, Yun Chujio put the stopper back on the outlet of the foil bucket, and Blood Tree also let go of Li Zhuangji and the others. Li Zhuangji and the others staggered to Yun Chujio's side. Before they could say anything, they saw that the Blood Tree's roots had already taken the foil bucket away. Blood Tree laughed out loud. "Stupid girl. You've been tricked. Do you really think that this lord has been blackmailed by you? This lord has merely played along. Without the earth fire. Let's see what you can do this time." As Blood Tree spoke, he directed the roots to sweep towards Yun Chujio and the others. Li Zhuangji and the others were instantly dumbfounded. They had thought that they had been saved, but who would have thought that they had been tricked? It's over, it's over. Yun Chujio was too naive. Why did she really give the foil bucket to Blood Tree? At this moment, Yun Chujio took out a large kitchen knife from the bag on her back. With a series of cracking sounds, she chopped the tree roots into pieces. Blood Tree said incredulously, "Impossible, impossible. These roots of mine are extremely strong. Now that you don't have any spiritual power, how can you cut off my roots?" Yun Chujo pouted at Zhao Hui and said with a smile, "Ugly monster, there are many things that you can't imagine." Just when Blood Tree was puzzled, he saw Zhao Hui pull out a foil bucket from the bushes. Yun Chujo said with a smile, "Ugly monster, no wonder people call you stupid. You are really an idiot. Do you think I only have that one foil bucket? Idiot." Chapter 4003, An Empty Bucket, not to mention the Blood Tree. Even Li Zhuangji and the others did not expect Yun Chujo to bring 2 foil buckets. Only Zhao Hui had a bitter smile on his face. Although these 2 foil buckets were not particularly heavy, without spiritual power, it also exhausted him. The Blood Tree immediately pulled its roots back a little, but it quickly sneered, "Stinky girl, do you think you are the only one who has earth fire? Don't forget, I also have a foil bucket in my hand. Although burning you to death will affect the absorption effect, it's still better than letting you escape." Li Zhuangji and the others immediately became nervous. Blood Tree was originally very difficult to deal with. If Blood Tree used earth fire to deal with them again, they would have no way to survive. Unexpectedly, when she heard Blood Tree's words, Yun Chujo giggled. "Ugly freak, why are you so stupid? Do you think that if there was earth fire in the foil barrel, I would hand it over to you? The earth fire inside has already been used up by me. What you got is just an empty foil barrel." Blood Tree used his roots to pull out the cork on the foil barrel in disbelief. Indeed, other than a few faint flames, there were no other flames jumping out from inside. Clearly, the inside was empty. Blood Tree was almost angered to death. After a long time, this wretched girl actually used an empty foil bucket to exchange for 5 hostages. It was simply a great humiliation. While Blood Tree was in a daze, Yun Chujo and the others turned around and ran. What a joke. If they didn't run, were they waiting to die? The earth fire in the foil bucket was limited. It was likely that there was no way to burn Blood Tree to death. The further the distance, the weaker the power of the Blood Tree's roots should be. The Blood Tree came back to its senses and instructed the roots to follow closely behind. Moreover, it also knew that Yun Chujo had a large kitchen knife and that Zhao Hui had a foil bucket, so it targeted Li Zhuangji and the others. It finally figured out. It was also confused just now. No matter what, it should first absorb the spiritual power of the 5 people so that the ducks in its mouth would not fly away. Li Zhuangji and the others were not as fast as those roots. Soon, they were entangled again and dragged toward the direction of the Blood Tree by those roots. At this time, they could only pin their hopes on Yun Chujo and Zhao Hui, screaming for help. Yun Chujo did not take Qiao, but used the kitchen knife to help them cut off the entangled roots. She did not let Zhao Hui use the earth fire. She wanted to save it for a critical moment. She wanted to burn the Blood Sand Island, but the island was shrouded in mist, and most of the plants that grew there had a lot of moisture. She tried to ignite the plants several times, but she could not burn them on a large scale. She could only give up this idea. Chun Bufan panted and said, "Junior Sister Yun, the tide is high now. Even if we can run down there, I'm afraid we won't be able to defeat those bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks." Yun Chujo laughed lightly. "There are no bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks on the north side of the Blood Sand Island. Zhao Hui and I came to the island from there. Well, escape from there." When Chun Bufan and the others heard that, they thought that it made sense. If there were bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks on the other side, Yun Chujo and Zhao Hui would not be able to come to the Blood Sand Island. Therefore, hope rekindled in their hearts, and they ran as fast as they could towards the back of the Blood Sand Island. However, when they finally reached the back of the Blood Sand Island, they tragically discovered that the surface of the sea was shimmering with scarlet light. It was terrifying under the moonlight. Chapter 4004. How do we break out of this predicament? Just as everyone was in a daze, Blood Tree's sinister laughter could be heard coming from the entire Blood Sand Island. "A bunch of idiots. My Blood Sand Island only allows entry and no exit. When you guys came, I naturally wanted to let you guys in. If you want to escape, no way." Following Blood Tree's voice, Many roots emerged from the ground. What was worse was that everyone found that their spiritual power had not recovered. It seemed that they could only recover their spiritual power by walking to the original spot on the beach. However, the place had been submerged by the sea, and there were many bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks gathered there. They would probably be bitten to death by those bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks before they recovered their spiritual power. It would be suicide to go there. Li Zhuangzi's eyes were red. It was possible that a person who was about to die would speak kindly, he said to Yun Chujio. Junior Sister Yun, it was all my fault in the past. I am not a human, and I have let you down. If there is a next life, I will definitely make up for my mistake. Chun Bufan also said with shame, Junior Sister Yun, I have let you down. If we can still get out alive, I will do everything I can to repay your kindness. Unfortunately, we will not live. Although the other 3 disciples did not say anything, their faces were also full of shame. In the face of death, the previous grudges were so laughable. They were simply stupid. Yun Chujio looked at them. It's good that you know. After all, there are not many people like me who repay grudges with kindness. Li Zhuangzi and the others, Yun Chujio, did not bother with these 5 idiots. If she had a choice, she would not have saved them. The main reason was that she and Zhao Hui had been dragged here by the wind and waves. When they saw the bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks around them, they had no choice but to stay on the island. Moreover, they had more people and more helpers. Moreover, Li Zhuangzi's father was a direct descendant of Elder Wan. If they could win over managerly, they could be considered as a help. However, how could they solve the current predicament? There was a small Wu Yun in the bag on her back, but she had tried it before. Whether it was on the sea or on the island, she could not use it. She had to say that a large kitchen knife was more reliable. Yun Chuju narrowed her eyes. Why could spiritual power be used in the sea? Even the original beach could use spiritual power? She had a vague idea in her mind. She consciously brought the group closer to the sea, only to see that the tree roots would not extend forward when they reached a place with seawater. Although the bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks could not reach the shallow water area due to their huge size, they continued to attack Yun Chujio and the others with water arrows. Fortunately, Yun Chujio and the others were quite agile due to the distance. They could still deal with it in a short period of time. Yun Chujio's eyes lit up. Those roots don't seem to like the seawater. Pour it on them, Yun Chujio said as she used her kitchen knife to pour seawater on the roots. Sure enough, the roots that were splashed by the seawater began to shrink. Li Zhuangzi and the others were overjoyed when they saw the situation. They poured seawater on the roots with all their might, temporarily forcing the roots back. Finally, they heaved a sigh of relief. Chun Bufan asked admiringly, Junior Sister Yun, how did you know that the roots are afraid of seawaters? Yun Chujio did not beat around the bush and explained, I was just guessing. Firstly, those roots stopped extending when they reached a place with seawater. Secondly, I guessed that the original beach could use spirit energy. I'm afraid that the roots of the blood tree were afraid of the seawater when the tide rose, so the control area could not extend to the original beach. Chapter 4005 was something that had been overlooked. Chun Bufan and the others nodded their heads as they listened. Yun Chujio had a belly full of bad ideas. It had originally been a nightmare for them, but now it had become a life-saving medicine. They even suspected that their original self was possessed by a ghost. Otherwise, why would they hate such a kind and intelligent junior sister Yun? In order to save their strength, Yun Chujio arranged for 3 people to splash seawater on the roots that were trying to get close. The other 3 people used their clothes to pull the water arrows. After all, they were wearing the uniform of the Nameless Sword sect. It was relatively sturdy. The remaining one was surrounded in the middle for a short rest. This way, they could take turns to have a breather. When the tide was low at dawn, they could reach a place where they could use their spiritual power and then make further plans. Seeing this, the blood tree was so angry that it gritted its teeth. However, it felt that even after dawn, these people would not be able to break through the bloodthirsty iron-skinned shark's blockade. Sooner or later, they would fall into its hands. Finally, the sun rose. The tide began to recede, gradually revealing the originally blood-red beach. Li Zhuangji and the others were ecstatic. The first thing they needed to do to recover their spiritual power was to swallow pills to replenish their strength. It's a pity that we can't use talismans here. Otherwise, we could have asked the sect for help. Zhao Hui sighed. Chen Bufan laid on the beach and said, "Now we can only hope that the sect will send someone to check on us after the mission deadline has passed. I'm so tired. I'm going to sleep first. I still have to splash water at night." Yun Chuzhou kicked him and said, "What are you talking about? We can't just wait here. The blood tree might have other plans. Although the bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks can't come ashore, there might be other sea beasts that can come ashore. By then, we won't be able to survive." Chen Bufan sat up immediately. He basically treated Yun Chujia's words as an imperial edict, so he didn't dare to disobey her. Zhao Hui said from the side, "Junior Sister Yun, there are only two ways now. One is to destroy the blood tree, and the second is to break through the blockade of the bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks and leave this place. However, either one is too difficult. We can't do it at all." Li Zhuangji and the others also sighed. Yes, the blood tree was so abnormal. Moreover, the area it covered could not even use spiritual power. How could they defeat it? Not to mention those bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks. There were around 100 to 200 of them. They couldn't defeat them no matter what. Everyone discussed for a while but couldn't come up with a solution. On the contrary, they were even less confident. They all drooped their heads, thinking that they could only live one day at a time. Yun Chujiu didn't say anything. She carefully combed through the things that had happened in the past few days, and she remembered something that she had neglected. That was why they hadn't encountered any other sea beasts since they entered the Lost Sea. Instead, there were so many bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks here. Moreover, there were many white bones around the blood tree. Besides human bones, many of them belonged to sea beasts. Since the blood tree didn't like seawater, how could it hunt sea beasts? Sea beasts didn't like ambergris like cultivators. They were instinctively alert to danger. Why would they foolishly come to the island? Yun Chujiu thought about it and looked at the bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks in the distance. Previously, the blood tree had said that the blood sand island would allow people to enter but not leave, so the behavior of these bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks was to cooperate with the blood tree. Perhaps they were also helping the blood tree to hunt the sea beasts, but why did they do that? Chapter 4006. I am the smartest person. Yun Chujiu suddenly stood up and walked towards the sea. Li Zhuangji and the others were shocked. They hurried over to stop her. "Junior Sister Yun, what are you doing? If you continue to walk forward, those bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks will eat you." Yun Chujiu waved her hand. "You're thinking too much. I just want to get closer. I'm not stupid. I won't send myself to my death." Hearing her words, everyone heaved a sigh of relief. However, they still followed behind her, afraid that something might go wrong. Forget about being grateful. The main thing was that this little girl was their backbone. If she died, they wouldn't be able to live. After Yun Chujiu got a little closer to the bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks, she waved her claws. "Hey, little guys, let's talk." Li Zhuangji and the others stumbled and almost fell into the sea. "Junior Sister Yun, is your eyesight bad? Can those behemoths be called little guys? What's there to talk about? They only want to eat us, okay?" Those bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks were also confused. Is this human girl crazy? Not only is her eyesight bad, but her brain is also bad. Therefore, a few bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks swam towards Yun Chujiu and began to shoot water arrows. Yun Chujiu naturally would not be stupid and wait to be shot into a sieve. She raised her spiritual energy barrier and retreated out of the attack range of the bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks. She sneered and said, "A bunch of idiots. I try to save you with good intentions, but it's fine if you don't appreciate it. Just keep being the executioner of that blood tree. The day the blood tree breaks free is the day you die." After saying that, Yun Chujiu acted as if nothing had happened. She returned to the beach and began to instruct Zhao Hui to cook the seafood. No matter what, it was more important to fill her stomach first. Chun Bufan moved closer to Yun Chujiu and asked in a low voice, "Junior Sister Yun, what did you mean just now? Why can't I understand?" Yun Chujiu glanced at him and said, "If you don't understand, then don't ask blindly. Help me cook." Chun Bufan, fine, he didn't ask anything. However, he noticed that the surface of the sea had started to become restless. Some of the bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks had started to gather and were roaring. It seemed that they were having a heated argument. Yun Chujiu looked at them coldly and didn't say anything else. She only said after the meal, "Little guys, if you don't want to be controlled by others, now is the best opportunity. Think about it. Those people who came before were killed by the blood tree. Only we are still alive and kicking. What does this mean? It means that we are blessed and blessed. We are sent by the heavens to save you. Also, I am the smartest person in this towering sky continent. Other than me, no one else can help you solve your current predicament. After this village, this shop will be useless. You must not miss it." Yun Chujiu burped and continued, "Also, all the sea beasts in this area have been killed. I'm afraid that blood tree will soon have its eyes on you. TSK, you're going to die." Blood tree finally couldn't take it anymore. It gritted its teeth and said to the bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks, "Don't listen to this bitch's nonsense. I won't mistreat you, and I won't hurt you. Your words are better than your singing. It's a pity that there is an idiom called the more you cover up, the more you'll be exposed. If you have nothing to hide, why are you so anxious to explain yourself?" Hei Xinjiu secretly gave herself a thumbs up. This idiom was too appropriate. She was getting more and more talented. Chapter 4007. One-eyed shark blood tree roared in exasperation. "Damn girl, if you continue to spout nonsense, this lord will not be polite to you." Yun Chujiu shrugged her shoulders. "Look, I've exposed its true colors, so I'm going to kill it to silence it. Little guys, you can choose where you want to go." Blood Tree was obviously angry. Those roots no longer cared about the seawater and directly spread to the beach. Almost at the same time, Yun Chujiu and the others found that their spiritual power was restrained. Yun Chujiu and the others had no choice but to retreat into the seawater and use their spiritual power to attack the roots. However, the roots continued to spread. The purpose was obvious. They wanted to force Yun Chujiu and the others into the attack range of the bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks. Zhao Hui said anxiously, "Junior Sister Yun, this can't go on. Think of something quickly." Chun Bufan and the others looked at Yun Chujiu expectantly. They had already regarded Yun Chujiu as their backbone. Yun Chujiu blinked her eyes and turned to look at the bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks that had not made any moves. Now, she could only take a gamble. "Little guys, even if you don't think about yourself, you have to think about your descendants, right? Are you always under the control of others? I'm sure you've already made your decision based on your intelligence. Come over. Let's force this ugly monster back to the island together. Let's think of a way to kill it completely and eliminate any future troubles." As expected, the bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks moved and swam towards Yun Chujiu and the others. However, Zhao Hui and the others revealed terrified expressions. Who knew if these bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks were here to help or to eat people? Only Yun Chujiu was calm and collected. She even had the leisure to wave her claws at the bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks. Blood Tree sneered in his heart. This darn girl was too naive. Those bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks had been firmly controlled by her. Did she think that a few words could make them betray her? How stupid. The bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks were getting closer and closer to Yun Chujiu and the others. What made Zhao Hui and the others slightly relieved was that they did not attack. Perhaps they were really here to help? However, they stopped about 30 meters away from Yun Chujiu and the others and stopped moving. Yun Chujiu swam in their direction. Zhao Hui and the others were completely dumbfounded. Was she going to throw her life away? However, They still had to stop the spreading roots, so they could only let Yun Chujo swim over. Yun Chujo swam to the front of those bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks and said with a smile, "Although you can understand my words, I can't understand your words. Why don't you send a representative to establish a spiritual connection with me?" A bloodthirsty iron-skinned shark swam to the front, and Yun Chujo found that this bloodthirsty iron-skinned shark was actually blind in one eye. She didn't know whether it was caused by the hunting process. Yun Chujo immediately established a spiritual sense connection with this one-eyed shark. The one-eyed shark's somewhat cold voice sounded, in Yun Chujo's spiritual sense. "Little girl, you really have guts. However, we haven't decided whether to cooperate with you or not. It depends on your ability." The corners of Yun Chujo's mouth curled up. "Tell me, what did that blood tree threaten you with?" The one-eyed shark said in a low voice, "Many sea beasts used to live on this blood sand island. This is also the paradise of our bloodthirsty iron-skinned shark. Because of the fragrance of the golden dragon, some cultivators would come here occasionally. In order to make it easier for us to hunt, we set up our nest at the bottom of the sea under the blood sand island. However, something unexpected happened a few months ago." Chapter 4008. Cubs. The one-eyed shark seemed to have recalled some bad memories. It paused for a moment before continuing. "That blood tree suddenly appeared on Blood Sand Island. While we were out hunting, its roots extended into our nest. All the cubs were poisoned by its roots. Only by regularly taking the juice that it used its roots to deliver could their lives be extended. We had no way to detoxify the poison, so we could only listen to its arrangements and help it hunt. Little girl, unless you can detoxify our cubs, we will not cooperate with you. After all, those cubs are the hope for the survival of our race." When Yun Chujo heard the one-eyed shark's words, she immediately said with a smile, "If it's another problem, I really don't have any solutions. But if it's poison, I'm not bragging. There's no poison in this world that I can't detoxify." Although the one-eyed shark felt that Yun Chujo was too arrogant, they were still desperate. After all, the sea beasts nearby were either dead or hiding. In the end, the blood tree would probably kill them too. "Since that's the case, follow me. As long as you can cure the young's poison, we're at your disposal," the one-eyed shark said. Yun Chujo nodded and immediately called Zhao Hui and the others who were still fighting against the roots of the blood tree over. Zhao Hui and the others had no other choice but to swim over. Yun Chujo said to them, "I'm going to do something. You guys wait for me here. Don't worry, with them protecting you, the blood tree won't do anything to you." Zhao Hui and the others were about to cry. "Protect? Are you sure these bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks are protecting them and not eating them?" Besides, it was too uncomfortable to keep soaking in the sea. Yun Chujo probably had a conscience. She summoned a ship from her storage ring and asked Zhao Hui and the others to wait on the ship. Then, she said to the one-eyed shark, "With them as hostages, you should be relieved, right? Let's go. Bring me there to take a look." Zhao Hui and the others, hostage? Junior sister Yun, do you know that you won't have any friends like this? Although the blood tree didn't hear what the one-eyed shark and Yun Chujo said, it had already guessed a little. It sneered in its heart. How could a puny human be able to solve its trick? Those bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks still wanted to struggle? It was really laughable. In the end, they could only obediently listen to its arrangements. Yun Chujo followed the one-eyed shark to the bottom of the sea. If other factors were taken into account, the scenery below was still pretty good. The seawater was clear, and the bottom of the sea was a patch of snow-white sand with seaweed swaying gently with the waves. The nest of this group of bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks was set up in a reef at the bottom of the sea, and there were more than a dozen bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks patrolling around. The status of the one-eyed shark was obviously not low. When the patrolling bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks saw that it had brought a little human girl over, although they were puzzled, they did not stop it. Yun Chujo soon saw dozens of bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks' babies. Those babies looked very lively, but each of them had a bright red mark on their back. The one-eyed shark said with grief and indignation, "Do you see that red bloodline? If you can't take the blood tree's juice on time, that bloodline will explode, and these babies will be in so much pain that they wish they were dead. Yun Chujio scolded with righteous indignation. That ugly monster is really not a thing. He actually used such a despicable method. Don't worry, I will definitely be able to help these poor little things detoxify. Chapter 4009. Bloodline. The one-eyed shark was skeptical of Yun Chujio's words. To be honest, if it hadn't been forced into a corner, it wouldn't have believed this little girl's nonsense. This little girl's age was too young. Even if she had learned medical skills from her mother's womb, it was impossible for her to be that high. How could she possibly cure the blood tree's poison? However, they had no other choice now. The previous group of cultivators had all been killed by the blood tree. These people could at least fight against the blood tree. Perhaps they really had some skills. Just as the one-eyed shark was thinking, Yun Chujio said to it, "I have to see what kind of poison it is up close. Call a cub over, and let me take a look." The one-eyed shark immediately called a more gentle cub over. The cub curiously sized up Yun Chujio with its big round eyes. Yun Chujio's heart suddenly softened when the cub looked at her with its innocent eyes. Generally speaking, all kinds of cubs were adorable because there were no impurities in their eyes. It was so pure that it made one's heart soften unconsciously. Yun Chujio touched the cub's head with her hand and then carefully looked at the bloodline on its back. Yun Chujio was surprised to find that the bloodline was not still. It was still moving slowly. She reached out to touch the bloodline. The bloodline began to twist and struggle as if it was going to break through the cub's skin. The baby immediately let out a scream and broke free from Yun Chujio's touch. The one-eyed shark was disheartened. It seemed that this little girl had no way to detoxify the poison. Could it be that their baby was really hopeless? Just as it was thinking, Yun Chujio touched her chin and said, "That is not poison. It looks like a goo." The one-eyed shark looked at Yun Chujio in confusion. It had never heard of goo poison. After all, sea beasts were rarely poisoned, let alone goo poison. Yun Chujio continued, "I'm not sure what it is. It could be goo, or it could be something else. But one thing is for sure, the blood tree has no intention of letting these cubs go. If I am not wrong, these cubs are growing extremely slowly. They even show signs of regressing. This is because the nutrients and spiritual power in their bodies have been absorbed by the blood veins. When your value is exhausted, these cubs will be completely devoured by these blood veins." The one-eyed shark's huge body trembled a few times. This little girl was right. The bloodthirsty iron-skinned shark cubs were growing very quickly, but these cubs had not changed much over the past few months. Could it be that what the little girl said was true? Yun Chujio knew that she was right the moment she saw the one-eyed shark's reaction. She narrowed her eyes and said, "If you want to completely remove these bloodlines from the cubs' bodies, you have to give me a chance to observe them properly. How about this? I'll knock out a cub so that it won't resist my inspection." Although the one-eyed shark was a little worried, it had no other choice but to let Yun Chujio knock out the previously docile baby. Yun Chujio then moved closer to the baby's back to observe the bloodline. With Yun Chujio's touch, the bloodline began to swim around the baby's back. Fortunately, the baby was already unconscious, or else the pain would be unbearable. The one-eyed shark at the side looked at the bloodline that kept swimming around. Its heart was filled with hatred for the blood tree. If it was not for the little girl, they might have been kept in the dark. The blood tree had never intended to let these cubs go. Chapter 40:10. Go Weiba. Yun Chujio frowned as she looked at the bloodline. It did not seem to be a goo. She looked closer and exclaimed, "This is not a goo. It is the root of the blood tree." The one-eyed shark was stunned. The root of the blood tree? If it is the root of the blood tree, wouldn't it lose its life if it was broken? Why are they still moving? Yun Chujio shook her head. "I don't quite understand either, but if you look closely, the patterns of the bloodlines are exactly the same as the roots of the blood tree." The one-eyed shark looked closely. It was obvious that the roots were very similar to the roots of the blood tree. Could it really be the roots of the blood tree? Perhaps it's a secret method of the blood tree. Moreover, every time it comes to feed the pups juice, it's not to detoxify them, but to absorb the spiritual energy and nutrients that the bloodlines absorb from the pups. These pups of yours are just a moving reserve of food for it. Yun Chujia's tone was a little cold. She inexplicably thought of Guai Chao. Damn it, she was practically the same as these pups, the damn dog tail. Guai Chao in her dantian was dumbfounded. How could this be related to it? Moreover, could these lowly roots of the blood tree be compared to it? After hearing Yun Chujia's words, the one-eyed shark was filled with grief and indignation. It wished that it could immediately go to the blood tree and fight to the death. However, the most important thing now was how to remove these bloodlines from the pups' bodies. Do you have a way to remove the blood veins? The one-eyed shark's tone was much gentler than before. There was even a hint of anticipation in it. Yun Chujio rubbed her chin and thought about it. This was really not an easy thing to do. The most direct way was naturally to cut open the baby's back and remove the blood veins to destroy them. However, if she used a knife to cut open the baby's back, the blood veins would definitely wander around. If it was not done properly, it would take the baby's life. Then the gains would not be worth the losses. Yun Chujio told the one-eyed shark about her worries, and the one-eyed shark was also dumbfounded. That's right, then what should she do? Could she only watch helplessly? Just as Yun Chujio was at a loss of what to do, the cat cub in the spiritual beast bag, or more accurately, the white tiger, suggested with the intention of atoning for her sins, "Little fairy, can't you just think of a way to prevent the blood veins from wandering?" Nonsense, if I had a way to prevent the blood veins from wandering, I wouldn't have to worry. You're acting like you didn't say anything, Yun Chujio said in an annoyed tone. Yun Chujio had also finished yelling at the kitten, and she suddenly had an idea. Yes, she could completely use a silver needle to fix the blood veins, as long as she moved fast enough before the blood veins broke free. She could totally pull it out from the back of the kitten. Moreover, she found that the bloodline basically did not have any intelligence. It was just seeking benefits and avoiding harm. As long as she was fast enough, she could totally achieve her goal. Yun Chujio told the one-eyed shark about her idea. The one-eyed shark did not agree at the beginning. It felt that it was too risky. It would be good if it succeeded, but once she was a little slower, the bloodline would continue to drift away. It might even kill the kitten. However, after Yun Chujio's boasting, the one-eyed shark still agreed. Forget it. Let's take a gamble. Therefore, Yun Chujio directly used the unconscious baby as the first test subject. She took out a 3-inch-long silver needle from her storage ring and gestured its length. She felt that it was enough to temporarily stabilize the bloodline. A hint of ruthlessness flashed in her eyes as she suddenly stabbed towards the middle of the bloodline. Chapter 4011. Single eye. Almost at the same time that the bloodline was pierced, the kitchen knife in Yun Chujio's hand had already cut the back of the baby. At the same time, her other hand grabbed one end of the bloodline, pulled out the silver needle, and pulled out the bloodline. The one-eyed shark stared at the bloodline in Yun Chujio's hand with its mouth agape. It was surprisingly the root of a blood tree, but it was much smaller than the other roots. The root struggled in Yun Chujio's hand, trying to pierce through Yun Chujio's skin. Yun Chujio sneered. She would not give it a chance to pierce through her skin. Even if it was lucky enough to enter her body, it would be feeding the Guai Chao, and the other two. Yun Chujio's right hand flashed with red light, and the bloodline was instantly burned into ashes by the small flame. Although the power of the small flame was limited in the water, it was still effortless to burn the bloodline. The one-eyed shark was dumbfounded by what it saw. Yun Chujio's series of actions were really too fast. However, only this little girl could remove the bloodline from the body of the baby so quickly. Yun Chujio took out a pill to stop the bleeding and fed it to the baby. Although the wound on the back looked quite scary, the self-healing ability of the demon beast was very strong, and the baby would probably be alive and kicking soon. Yun Chujio looked at the one-eyed shark. How is it? Do you want to continue? The one-eyed shark nodded quickly. Of course, it had to continue. As long as it took out all the blood veins on the baby's back, they would no longer have to be threatened by the blood tree. However, Yun Chujio did not take action immediately. Instead, she looked at it with a smile and said, "As you can see, my method is very good. However, it consumes both physical strength and medicinal pills. Most importantly, I have to prevent the blood veins from attacking me. You have to show some sincerity, right?" The one-eyed shark was dumbfounded. What did he mean? How did this style change so quickly? Didn't he look like he was ready to discuss it? Why were they talking about conditions now? Single Eye, don't be angry. I'm absolutely different from that old thing blood tree. I'm just trying to protect myself. After all, how can we 7 little weaklings be a match for a group of behemoths like you? If I save all the cubs and you turn against me, where are we going to cry? So, let's establish a temporary contract first. When we work together to destroy Blood Tree and safely escape, I will definitely cancel the contract. Yun Chujio said sincerely. Single Eye? The Single Eye shark was furious. It hated being called Single Eye the most. It had a high status among the sharks. Usually no shark dared to call it that. It did not expect this little girl to actually call it Single Eye. It was really angered to death. However, even though it was angry, the Single Eye shark still reluctantly established a temporary contract with Yun Chujio. There was no other reason. Other than this little girl, no one else could save these cubs. Moreover, even if this little girl had bad intentions and wanted to take its life, its death was not worth it. As long as it could save these cubs, it would be fine. The reason why Yun Chujio chose to contract the one-eyed shark was firstly because she felt that its status was not low. Secondly, after coming into contact with it, she found that the one-eyed shark was more reasonable. With it as a medium of communication, it would be easier for her to proceed to the next step. After the contract was completed, Yun Chujio began to take out the bloodlines from the other cubs. Other than a few that were slightly flawed, the rest of the process was very smooth. The reason why there were flaws was that some of the blood veins actually broke the body into 2 pieces. Fortunately, Yun Chujio was prepared and used another silver needle to fix it. In the end, she still took out the blood veins from the pups' bodies. Chapter 40:12. She did it. Yun Chujio took out all the blood veins on the back of the cubs and burned them. She leaned against a reef, feeling a little exhausted. Although it did not consume much spiritual power and physical strength, it was easy for people to feel tired when they suddenly relaxed because they had to be highly focused. This was also because she had the water-repellent bead. Otherwise, she would not have been able to stay underwater for so long. The one-eyed shark also realized this, but it obediently did not ask. This little girl seemed to have many secrets. Other things aside, the flames in her palm were a little strange. The cubs also gradually woke up. Although they could feel the pain in their backs, they realized that the bloodlines that had tortured them were gone. They immediately swam around Yun Chujio, excitedly. Yun Chujio rested for a while and then said to the one-eyed shark, "In order to prevent the blood tree from attacking these cubs again, bring them to the surface of the sea." The one-eyed shark felt that what Yun Chujio said made sense. It immediately asked the bloodthirsty iron-skinned shark, who was responsible for protecting the cubs, to escort the cubs to the surface of the sea. It swam at the back of the team with Yun Chujio. The cubs would occasionally turn around and swim to Yun Chujio's side. They would even use their heads to gently touch Yun Chujio to express their intimacy. In the end, Yun Chujio could only swim to the middle of the cubs and swim to the surface of the sea under their escort. The one-eyed shark could not help but smile bitterly. From the looks of it, the little girl did not need to establish a contract with it at all. If they were to turn hostile, the cubs would probably not agree to it. At this moment, on the surface of the sea, Zhao Hui and the others were sitting on pins and needles. They were practically itching for it. The bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks were also a little irritated. A few of them even used their tails to ram into the big ship a few times, almost scaring Zhao Hui and the others to death. They felt that if Yun Chujio did not return, these bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks would probably unleash their ferocious nature and eat them up. Just as they were fidgeting, the waves in the distance churned, and a few bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks emerged from the water. Soon after, several young bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks also emerged from the water, and the junior sister Yun that they had been longing for was riding on the one-eyed shark and waving her claws at them. Zhao Hui and the others were dumbfounded at first, and then tears almost fell. They were saved. Although they didn't know how junior sister Yun did it, since she was able to ride on the back of the one-eyed shark, it meant that she must have gained the recognition of the one-eyed shark. Whether they could defeat the blood tree or not, they at least had a way out. The bloodthirsty iron-skinned shark's attention was not on Yun Chujio, but on the lively cubs. Although they did not know that the blood veins on the backs of the cubs had been removed, hearing their happy cries, they knew that the little girl had most likely done it. Of course, there was one person, no, a shark, who was extremely depressed. The one-eyed shark felt aggrieved. This little girl was too mean. After swimming for a while, she said that her strength was exhausted and that she could not swim anymore. The cub scrambled to carry her. As an elder, could it watch the injured cubs carry the little girl? Therefore, the final result was that she became the smelly girl's mount. The leader of the bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks could not wait to welcome her. When it saw that although there was a wound on the back of the cubs, there was no longer any bloodline, it could not help but look up at the sky and wail, "God bless." The bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks were finally saved. Chapter 40:13 The sorrowful cries of the sharks. Following the sorrowful cries of the leader of the bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks, all the bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks on the surface of the sea raised their heads to the sky and cried sorrowfully. At this moment, they finally had the opportunity to vent their pent-up anger and resentment from the past few days. It was not easy for the bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks to breed offspring. If these cubs died prematurely, there would not be any new cubs born for decades. That was why they were threatened by the blood tree. The cubs also responded to the sorrowful wails of the elders with their tender voices. Although they did not know much about what the elders had done for them, it did not prevent them from feeling the repressed grief and indignation. Yun Chujio sighed silently. Let's see. Whether it was humans or demonic beasts, they had to become stronger. Otherwise, they could only be controlled by humans. When Blood Tree heard the loud and mournful cry, it was shocked and uncertain. Could it be that the stinky girl really did it? How did she do it? If it lost control of these bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks, it would not be able to hunt more demonic beasts and humans. This stinky girl really deserved to die. Although Blood Tree was very annoyed, it thought about it. Even if the sharks broke away from its control, it would not be a big deal. Even if the few humans and the sharks joined hands, they would not be able to do anything to it. After all, it could not use its spiritual power in the area covered by its roots. Moreover, those bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks could not leave the deep sea area, so they could not pose a threat to it. With this thought, the Blood Tree felt a little more at ease. Anyway, as long as the golden dragon incense was around, there would be cultivators who would come to die. It was not in a hurry. One day, it would break free from this damn restraint. At the same time, Yun Chujio was also discussing with the sharks about how to destroy the Blood Tree. The one-eyed shark acted as a translator and kept feeding the shark's opinions back to Yun Chujio. We have no way to go ashore to deal with the Blood Tree. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been threatened by it. We would have forced it to detoxify long ago. Moreover, even if we can go ashore, the roots of the Blood Tree will restrict spiritual power wherever it goes. We are not its match even if we go up. Little girls, why don't you leave this place? Well, swim to the deep sea and let it go. Chun Bufan and the others also felt that it was a good idea to leave this place temporarily. They were not a match for the Blood Tree alone, so they might as well go back to the sect and ask for help. Yun Chujio thought for a moment and said, "Of course, I want to leave as well. However, this Blood Tree is very strange. It might cause a bigger disaster in the future. It's better to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. In particular, the method it uses to control the young sharks is too sinister. Perhaps it will soon find a replacement for the sharks." At that time, it's probably useless no matter how far the sharks hide. Of course, everything I said is under the premise of ensuring our own safety. Let me think about it first. If there isn't a perfect plan, then it's not too late for us to retreat. Yun Chujia's words moved the sharks. She was right. If the blood tree used the same method to control other sea beasts, then all the sea beasts in the Lost Sea would suffer. Moreover, they hated the blood tree. It would be best if they could kill the blood tree. Yun Chujio let the one-eyed shark take her to the bottom of the sea again. She wanted to see the situation below the blood sand island at a close distance. The one-eyed shark naturally would not refuse and carried Yun Chujio to the bottom of the sea. According to what Yun Chujio knew, there were only 3 types of islands. One was a protruding land that was directly connected to the Earth's crust. The second type was a coral island, which was formed from the accumulation of coral bones. The third type was a volcanic island, which was formed after the lava from the volcano cooled down. So, which is this blood sand island? Chapter 40:14. The main body of the blood tree. While Yun Chujio was thinking, the one-eyed shark said, "The blood sand island is right in front of us. Although the roots of the blood tree won't easily spread in the sea, it's better for us to stay far away, just in case." Yun Chujio looked up and saw an island in the distance. However, that island was floating in the sea. To be exact, it was fixed to the bottom of the sea by several chains. Just as Yun Chujio was surprised. The one-eyed shark said from the side, "Originally, this blood sand island was connected to the bottom. I don't know what happened, but a few months ago, it suddenly broke into 2 pieces from the middle, and then these chains appeared." Yun Chujio was surprised and remembered that the blood tree had said that if it absorbed enough spiritual power, it would break free from the chains. Could it be that the blood tree's so-called breaking free was to break free from these chains? Yun Chujio sorted out her train of thought. According to the one-eyed shark, the blood sand island was peaceful previously, which meant that the blood tree was originally suppressed under the sea, and for some unknown reason, it broke free of a part of the chains. That was why it appeared on the blood sand island. Once these chains were all broken, the blood tree would completely regain its freedom. Yun Chujio frowned. Logically speaking, these chains should have locked the blood tree, but why did they lock the entire blood sand island? Yun Chujio thought about it, and a strange thought arose in her mind. Could it be that the entire blood sand island was the main body of the blood tree? Although Yun Chujio felt that this thought was somewhat inconceivable, in order to verify her own thoughts, she released a hua. When the one-eyed shark saw a hua, it was dumbfounded. This was the legendary spiritual beast, right? But it was just a little piglet? What kind of attack power did this thing have? However, in the next moment, it changed its mind because Da Hua had turned black. The one-eyed shark was frightened by Da Hua's huge figure and shivered. It thought to itself, this little girl really doesn't show her true colors. However, what did she want to do by releasing this spiritual beast? Da Hua, go and attack that floating island. Remember not to touch those chains, Yun Chujio instructed. The one-eyed shark was even more confused now. Was this little girl crazy? Although the blood tree grew on the blood sand island, what was the point of attacking the blood sand island? It originally thought that this little girl was smart, but now it turned out that she was also stupid. While the single-eyed shark was thinking, Da Hua had already begun to attack the blood sand island. At first, there was nothing unusual, but soon, the roots of the blood tree spread out and began to counterattack. After Yun Chujio let the single-eyed shark carry her and retreat, she sneered and said, "Single Eye, do you understand now? This entire blood sand island is the main body of the blood tree. However, first, it is to trap sea beasts and cultivators, and second, it is to isolate the seawater, so it is wrapped in a layer of outer shell. We only need to peel off its shell to see its main body. By then, we can completely destroy it." The one-eyed shark was confused. It asked in puzzlement, "What? What do you mean?" Yun Chujio could only explain, in other words, the blood tree was suppressed to the bottom of the sea for some reason. However, it might have been too long, and the seal was loosened. It thought of ways to gather the rocks and sand below to hide its main body. Finally, a few months ago, its seal loosened again. Only then did it reveal a part of its true form on the Blood Sand Island. You will know what happened after that. As for the small island that you mentioned, it broke into two parts. The blood tree must have broken its outer shell when it broke free from its true form. That was why you misunderstood that it was the mountain range that broke. Chapter 40:15 Blood Trees Conspiracy. The one-eyed shark finally understood what Yun Chujio meant. It widened its eyes in surprise. If this little girl's guess was correct, wouldn't they be able to take revenge themselves? Yun Chujio let Dahua attack a few more times to confirm her judgment. She immediately rode the one-eyed shark back to the surface of the sea. After the one-eyed shark told everyone about Yun Chujio's judgment, the leader of the group of sharks immediately brought the group of sharks to the bottom of the sea and began to besiege the Blood Sand Island that was chained up. Although Zhao Hui and the others did not use water repellent beads, Yun Chujio gave them a lot of water repellent beads, so they also dived into the water to attack the Blood Sand Island together. The group of sharks hated the blood tree to the core. They used all their strength to attack. Even the young ones kept attacking with water arrows from behind. Even in their dreams, the blood tree did not expect Yun Chujio to see through its tricks. Although its shell was strong, it could not withstand the sharks' attacks. Soon, the rocks and mud attached to the blood tree fell to the bottom of the sea, revealing the blood tree's true form. The blood tree waved its roots crazily and shouted angrily, "I'll give you one more chance. Leave this place immediately. I'll let bygones be bygones. If you're still stubborn, I'll kill you all together." Blood tree's threat was obviously effective. The leader of the sharks hesitated. Yun Chujio sneered, "Don't listen to its nonsense. If it really had that ability, it would have broken free from the restraints here long ago. Don't forget one thing. If you don't get rid of the roots, there will be trouble in the future. If we don't kill this ugly monster today, there will definitely be trouble in the future. If you're worried, just keep the cubs away. The rest of you attack." The leader of the sharks thought about it and agreed. Even if the blood tree really wanted to fight to the death, as long as they could keep the cubs alive, it wouldn't matter even if they died. Thus, the sharks continued to attack. Seeing that the threat was ineffective, the blood tree could only continue to fight with the sharks. Blood tree gradually lost its ability to resist. Suddenly, many tiny red roots shot out from the main trunk of blood tree. Yun Chujio was shocked. Don't let those roots enter your bodies. Those roots are the things that entered the bodies of the young. When the sharks heard Yun Chujio's warning, they hurriedly dodged or used water arrows to shatter the red roots. Only a few bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks were pierced by the red roots. Yun Chujio was afraid that things would change, so she ordered the sharks to continue attacking while she quickly took the one-eyed sharks and began to remove the red roots from the bodies of the bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks. Unexpectedly, when she was taking one of the red roots, the red root drilled into Yun Chujio's left palm at an extremely fast speed. At the same time, the chained body of the blood tree shattered into powder. Yun Chujio's arrogant voice came from within the body of the blood tree. "Damned girl. You've ruined this lord's plan. This lord can use your body to escape from the restraints, ha." Zhao Hui and the others were stunned for a moment before they reacted. The reason why the blood tree had mixed its soul with the red roots was to possess her. It was over. Now that the blood tree had entered Junior Sister Yun's body, Junior Sister Yun would definitely be possessed. At that time, wouldn't Junior Sister Yun become the blood tree? The sharks were also dumbfounded. No one had expected such a turn of events. Then the problem came. What should they do now? If they wanted to eradicate the root of the problem, they should undoubtedly kill Yun Chujio. This way, they wouldn't give the blood tree the chance to possess her and then completely destroy her. However, Yun Chujio would definitely not survive this. Chapter 40:16 had been eaten by Guai Chao. The sharks began to quarrel fiercely. Although Zhao Hui and the others could not understand the sharks' cries, they could guess a thing or two. In fact, they were also very conflicted. They naturally did not want Yun Chujio to die, but if she was possessed by the blood tree, then Yun Chujio would not be Yun Chujio anymore. The sharks finally came to a conclusion. Several bloodthirsty, iron-skinned sharks surrounded Yun Chujio. It was clear that they wanted to kill Yun Chujio before the blood tree successfully possessed her, so as to avoid any future trouble. The one-eyed shark could not bear to do so, but there were too many sharks that claimed to kill Yun Chujio. It could not stop them at all. It could only watch from the side dejectedly. At this moment, the cubs that were hiding in the distance rushed over with sharp roars. They used their mouths and tails to push the bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks that surrounded Yun Chujio. The cubs' actions not only shocked the sharks, but also Zhao Hui and the others. At the same time, a sense of shame welled up in their hearts. They didn't even have the conscience of these cubs. Even if junior sister Yun was in danger of being possessed, as long as there was a glimmer of hope, they shouldn't give up. Thus, Zhao Hui and the others stood in front of Yun Chujio. If the shark group attacked, then they could only fight to the death with the shark group. The sharks were obviously shocked by the actions of the cubs. They did not have the awareness of Zhao Hui and the others, but the cubs protected Yun Chujio, Zhao Hui, and the others in the middle. They had no way to attack Yun Chujio at all. The situation was at a stalemate for a moment. The blood tree, which had already entered Yun Chujio's body, was overjoyed when it saw the situation. As long as it entered this wretched girl's spiritual sense and swallowed her spiritual sense, it could successfully possess her. After that, it would be able to use these idiots as cover and escape. Just as the blood tree was enjoying itself, it could not help but slide towards the direction of its dantian. The blood tree was shocked. The direction it was heading towards was the wretched girl's head. How could it slide down? It desperately tried to swim upwards. However, it was unable to resist the huge force coming from its dantian. Very quickly, it slid down to Yun Chujio's dantian. Before it could even figure out what was going on, it was pressed down by the leaves of the Guai Chao. Then, the Guai Chao began to nibble away at it. Guai Chao thought that it was because of this good-for-nothing that it was scolded. It could use it to make up for the trauma in its heart. Before the blood tree could even cry for help, it was nibbled away by the Guai Chao. Yun Chujio had been watching coldly from the side. She was confident enough to deal with the blood tree. Even if the blood tree could swim into her spiritual sense, she could still command the weapon spirits to attack it, let alone the Guai Chao. Thinking of the weapon spirits, Yun Chujio could not help but feel a little guilty. Those weapon spirits were all abducted from the ancient sword tomb, and they were all offensive spirit weapons. There were even several immortal swords. It did not seem good for her to occupy them just like that. Of course, the reason why Qi Ling said that he was not too good was not because he felt sorry for those weapon spirits, but because he felt sorry for himself. It was really a waste to just leave so many good things lying around. She had to think of a way to make full use of them when she had the chance. Yun Chujio glanced at Zhao Hui and the others, and the shark group again. Finally, her gaze fell on those cubs. These little things were still very naive and cute. It was not in vain for her to save them. Yun Chujio saw that the strange grass had already swallowed all of the blood tree. Then, she said slowly, "All right, you don't have to consider whether you want to kill me or not. It's most likely because my blood is poisonous. The blood tree is already dead." Chapter 4017 was rich. As soon as Yun Chujio's words left her mouth, both Xiao Hui and Sha Kun looked at her suspiciously. That was because they really couldn't tell if it was Yun Chujio or Blood Tree who was speaking. Yun Chujio rolled her eyes and said to Li Zhuangji and the others, "Senior Brother Li, Senior Brother Chen, I still remember the spiritual stones you owe me. Don't tell me you still think that'll go back on my words after I die." Yun Chujio looked at the single-eye shark again. "Single Eye, we have established a temporary contract. If I am possessed by the blood tree, can you not feel it? Idiot." The moment Yun Chujio said those words, both Xiao Hui and the sharks immediately believed that she was Yun Chujio because the only one who could say such derogatory words was that pervert Yun Chujio. Especially the one-eyed shark. It could feel that the temporary contract was still there. This was enough to prove that Yun Chujio was not possessed. It immediately heaved a sigh of relief in its heart. This crisis was finally over. Yun Chujio went to the place where the blood tree was originally locked and circled around. When she realized that the thick chains were all 10,000-year-old black iron, she almost went crazy with joy. Because the blood tree had already turned into ashes, the array formation of the iron chains had also been broken by itself. Yun Chujio easily put the iron chains into her bag one by one. Although Zhao Hui and the others were envious, they did not have the face to compete with Yun Chujio. Instead, they helped her to drag the 10,000-year-old black iron chains. The cubs kept circling around Yun Chujio. One of them gave Yun Chujio something. Yun Chujio looked at it and exclaimed, "Hey, isn't this the legendary white ambergris?" It turned out that the blood tree had collected a lot of ambergris to attract cultivators. Once it was destroyed, the ambergris naturally fell to the bottom of the sea. In order to please Yun Chujio, the cubs picked the most beautiful color and gave it to Yun Chujio. Yun Chujio's eyes immediately lit up. She immediately asked the cubs to help her find the scattered ambergris. The cubs were naturally very willing to help her. Some adult bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks even helped her look for it. Li Zhuangji and the others looked at it and suddenly felt as if their hearts were going crazy. Back then, they had risked great danger to pick up a few pieces of brown ambergris on the beach. Each and every one of them was about to go crazy with joy. However, junior sister Yun had easily obtained a few sacks of ambergris. It was simply infuriating. After cleaning up the battlefield, everyone floated to the surface of the sea. The group of sharks returned the large ship that they had dragged down to Yun Chujio and the others. After everyone boarded the ship, Yun Chujio shed a few crocodile tears and then left the group of sharks that were reluctant to part. On the large ship, Li Zhuangji and the others who had survived the disaster collapsed on the deck. The experiences these few days were simply soul-stirring. They had narrowly escaped death several times, and it was simply extremely dangerous. They were filled with gratitude towards Yun Chujio. If junior sister Yun had not put aside their past grudges and saved them, they would have died hundreds of times already. Just as they were about to solemnly express their gratitude towards Yun Chujio. However, they saw Yun Chujio take out a small notebook and read, "Li Zhuangji, 10 double-tailed jumping fish, 3 cracked clams, and 2 giant pincer prawns. Consider it a friendship price. Just give me 100,000 high-grade spirit stones. Chun Bufan, 8 double-tailed jumping fish. In order to save you, I used 2 foil buckets of king-level fire essence Beast Earth Fire. It'll give you a 99 to 81 discount. Each of you owes me 1 million high-grade spirit stones. Also, the waterproof beads I lent you before were quite expensive. Are you paying or borrowing?" Li Zhuangji and the others. Forget it. It seemed that there was no need to be grateful, because they would have to work hard for her for the rest of their lives. Chapter 4018. Happy butt-face Yun Chujio looked at the few of them who wanted to cry, but had no tears. The corners of her mouth curled up. Although gratitude could last for a period of time, it was far less profound than debt. Moreover, gratitude was too heavy and made people numb. It was more suitable for her to be a creditor. Therefore, under the coercion of He Xinjiu, Li Zhuangji and the others wrote down the loan slip. The amount written on it made their hearts bleed. They would not be able to repay it in a few decades. Yun Chujio was satisfied and kept the loan slip. Then, she painfully took out a few brown golden dragon jaw sticks and stuffed them into Li Zhuangzi's hands. Just use these to hand in the mission. I'm quite generous. The corners of Li Zhuangji and the others' eyes twitched. Generous? Those bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks had helped her collect a few sacks of golden dragon jaw sticks. Moreover, the quality was high quality. These few pieces were simply a drop in the bucket. However, even if these few pieces were sold, they would still be worth a lot of spirit stones. She could be considered to have some conscience. Compared to her, Yun Chujio was practically a slave who had turned over a new leaf and was singing. Whether it was cooking or being on duty, she did not need to do anything. All she needed to do was to sit on the recliner and bask in the sun. She simply felt great. However, this fellow still had some worries in his heart. He did not know if the Divine Devil Hall and the 9 pavilions would have any tricks up their sleeves. He could only deal with them as they came. They could not hide in the Nameless Sword sect just because of unknown dangers. If that was the case, there was no way to increase their combat experience. However, the next few days went very smoothly. There were no abnormalities, and everyone arrived on land safely. The fishermen originally thought that Yun Chujio and the others had lost their lives, but they did not expect them to return safely. Yun Chujio bought a lot of sea goods and kept them for her to eat at the Nameless Sword sect. When Li Zhuangji and the others thought of the sky-high price of the sea goods that Yun Chujio sold to them, they immediately bought a lot of them to avoid being cheated by Yun Chujio in the future. In this way, the fishermen were extremely happy. They sold almost all of their stocks and made a small fortune. The group left the beach on foot. They only needed to walk another 100 miles before they could use their flying spirit tools. Yun Chujio narrowed her eyes. If someone wants to ambush us, this 100 miles is the most suitable place to set up an ambush, so everyone should be careful. Although Li Zhuangji and the others' attitudes towards Yun Chujio had changed a lot, they still felt that she was being alarmist. They were the disciples of the Nameless Sword sect, so who would dare to ambush them? The previously noisy Divine Devil Hall had vanished without a trace due to the joint search by the various major factions. Even if the remaining factions were at odds with the Nameless Sword sect, they would not openly attack the disciples of the Nameless Sword sect. Seeing that they did not take it to heart, Yun Chujio immediately summoned Buttface. Although this fellow was a little useless, he was very alert. If there was an ambush nearby, he would definitely be able to discover it. Buttface was suffocating inside the spirit beast bag. Now that he was finally released, he was naturally having fun on the ground. Although he could not speak due to the presence of others, he could still communicate with Yun Chujio using his spiritual sense. Little fairy, I miss you to death. Congratulations on making a windfall again. I have to say that you are getting worse and worse. Buttface's eyes were full of flattery. Yun Chujio had already gotten used to this guy's strange way of thinking. She just curled the corners of her mouth and ignored this idiot. Buttface did not mind. He was jumping around like a little girl. Zhao Hui smiled and said, Junior Sister Yun, although your spirit pet is just an ordinary spirit dog, it has a lively personality. It's not bad to use it to relieve boredom. Buttface glared at Zhao Hui with his dog eyes. He thought to himself, fuck, why didn't those drifters kill you back then? How dare they talk about Lord Buttface? Chapter 40:19 Spiritual pets came to help. Yun Chujio caught a glimpse of Buttface's resentful eyes and said with a chuckle, Senior Brother Zhao, you're right. Buttface doesn't have any other abilities other than to relieve my boredom. He's simply trash. Buttface. Yun Chujio raised her eyebrows and looked at Buttface when she saw him glaring at her. Buttface immediately said eagerly, Little fairy, you're really right when you say it like that. As long as what Little Fairy said is all right, wrong, right? I'd rather be a little trash by your side for the rest of my life. The corner of Yun Chujio's mouth twitched. In the future, if this Buttface wanted to pursue his wife, no spiritual pet would be able to escape. This guy was really too flexible. While everyone was chatting and laughing, Buttface stopped in his tracks. Little fairy, there is an ambush about 5 miles ahead, and there are quite a number of people. Yun Chujio frowned and immediately said to everyone, turn around and run back, quickly. Although Li Zhuangji and the others felt that Yun Chujio was somewhat inexplicable, they did not have the time to think too much and immediately ran wildly with Yun Chujio. They did not run far before many people wearing black masks rushed out from the bushes on both sides of the road and chased closely behind. When Li Zhuangji and the others turned their heads and saw it, their heads buzzed. Junior Sister Yun had really said it. There was actually someone who had set up an ambush to kill them. Yun Chujio calculated in her heart that there were more than 100 people chasing after them. If they fought head-on, they had no chance of winning. She might as well lure them to the sea. When the time came, they might have a chance of winning. Therefore, she brought Li Zhuangji and the others and ran toward the sea. However, Buttface quickly said, "Little fairy, there are many people coming from the front. I'm afraid that they have already made arrangements." Yun Chujiu clenched her fists. That's right. Since they wanted to set up an ambush, they naturally had to think carefully. If they wanted to block them from the front and back, they could only run to the two sides. However, there were ambushes coming from the left and right sides from not far away, forming an encirclement. When Li Zhuangji and the others saw that there were 500 to 600 people encircling them, their faces turned pale. It was over. It was really over. These people wearing the black masks of the Divine Devil Hall were obviously people from the Divine Devil Hall. They didn't expect that they would actually dare to come out and hurt people under the massacre of the various major powers. They were truly arrogant to the extreme. The leader of the group, a man wearing a silver mask, didn't say anything. He only waved his hand at his subordinates, and everyone rushed towards Yun Chujiu and the other three. Yun Chujiu and the other three surrounded each other, and Yun Chujiu immediately shouted, "Set up the sword formation." The 7 of them immediately set up the 7-star sword formation and fought with their lives on the line. However, not to mention that they had not trained properly previously, even the 7 successive disciples were not a match for these hundreds of people. In a short while, other than Yun Chujiu, the other 6 people had already died. Yun Chujiu had no choice but to release all the spiritual pets in her spiritual beast bag. Now, she could only give it her all. Whether it was the other party, Li Zhuangji, or the others, they were all very shocked when they saw Yun Chujiu's spiritual pets. These spiritual pets looked very ordinary, but they all had extraordinary abilities. Xiao Hanyo, who was as fat as a ball, spat out extremely powerful flames. In an instant, the spiritual energy barrier of the other party was completely burned. The roars of the 4 half-tailed Xiaohong foxes had a seductive effect. If one was not careful, it would cause one's spiritual sense to be in a trance. The little black mouse could send a person flying with a single swipe of its claw. One could see how powerful it was. There was also that little bastard, that little mushroom, and that group of weird-looking rabbits. What surprised them the most was that spiritual pet that was like a kitten. Its movements were as fast as a phantom. Once it was scratched by its sharp claws, it would instantly tear a person apart. Chapter 40-20 Puppet. Everyone was surprised. What the hell were these things? Besides, how could one person have so many spiritual pets? Yun Chujiu felt it was a pity. It would have been better if this place wasn't restricted to flying. She could still release those giant winged birds, but releasing them now would only be suicide. Even with the help of the spiritual pets, she had killed more than 100 enemies. However, the difference in strength between the two sides was too great. Whether it was the spiritual pets or Yun Chujiu and the others, they were already injured. They probably wouldn't be able to hold on for more than 10 minutes. Buttface was extremely annoyed that he was only a good-for-nothing now. He reminded, "Little fairy, release the puppets." It wasn't that Yun Chujiu didn't think of releasing the puppets before, but because of the self-destruction of puppet number 1, number 2, and number 3, she had a shadow in her heart. She was afraid that if she released puppet number 4 and puppet number 5, she would make the same mistake again. But now, she had no other choice. Yun Chujiu immediately released puppet number 4 and puppet number 5. This time, everyone was shocked. They had never seen a puppet with intelligence. Where did this Yun Chujiu come from? However, even so, Yun Chujiu and the others still had no way to get rid of the enemy. The other party was obviously well prepared. They were afraid that something might go wrong, so they sent so many people to kill them. When the silver-masked man saw that Yun Chujiu and the others were basically unable to fight back, he could not help but sneer. Although the process was a little off, the result was always good. None of these people could survive. Yun Chujiu originally had another trump card, which was to awaken her strength under stimulation. However, she didn't know if it was because she wasn't stimulated too much. No matter how hard she stared, there were no signs of darkening. She was so anxious that she was about to hit the wall. Also, that little piece of trash, the Great Void Mirror, went into hibernation at the critical moment. It was simply a fucking useless thing. Could it be that she could only die here today? After Dog 2 limped and killed an enemy, it shouted, "Little fairy, don't you still have 3 puppets? Quickly take them out. Do you want to leave a cub behind?" Yun Chujio did not have the time to argue with Dog 2 now. She immediately took out the 3 puppets. If it was not for Dog 2's reminder, she would have forgotten about these 3 puppets. However, she felt that it was useless because these 3 puppets were made of ordinary fine iron. There was no way that they could be compared to puppet number 4 and puppet number 5. Their strength was inferior to theirs. As expected, the 3 puppets were soon covered in wounds. Yun Chujio and the others were surrounded by them. The silver-masked man sneered and said, "Yun Chujio, if you still have any abilities, just use them. None of you will survive today. When you die, your precious puppets and spiritual pets will be mine." Before Yun Chujio could reply, Li Zhuangji shouted in disbelief, "Martial Uncle Liu? You are Martial Uncle Liu? You actually defected to the Divine Devil Hall?" A trace of annoyance flashed across the silver-masked man's eyes. He originally did not intend to speak, but since the situation was good, he could not hold it in. Thinking of this, the silver-masked man sneered a few times. "What Martial Uncle Liu? Martial Uncle Zhang. All of you will die here today." Li Zhuangzi's gaze fell on the silver-masked man's right hand that was holding the sword. The small finger on it was missing a bit. He shook his head in disbelief again. "You don't have to deny it. You are Martial Uncle Liu. I don't understand. You usually have a good relationship with my father. Why did you want to kill me? Could it be that you really joined the Divine Devil Hall?" Chapter 40:21. The puppet in the sword formation. The silver-masked man suddenly laughed gloomily. "Since you've recognized her, I'll let you be the one to understand. This is all an order from the elder. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself for not being able to kill Yun Chujio. If you had killed Yun Chujio on the sea, we naturally wouldn't have gone through so much trouble to come up with such a plan. You're really a good-for-nothing who cannot accomplish anything." Li Zhuangzi's face was filled with both shock and anger. He knew that the elder the silver-masked man was talking about was Elder Wan, because the silver-masked man and manager Li were both under Elder Wan. He asked with bloodshot eyes, Aren't you afraid that my father will find out the truth?" The silver-masked man sneered. "So, what if he finds out the truth? Do you think your father would dare to go against the elder? Besides, your father might go down to accompany you soon." Li Zhuangji angrily raised his sword and stabbed at the silver-masked man. The silver-masked man didn't dodge at all. Some of his men had already surrounded Li Zhuangji. If it weren't for Qin Bufan and the others who fought to the death, Li Zhuangji would have already been killed. The silver-masked man snorted contemptuously and said, "You have already learned the truth. Now go to hell." Yun Chujio gritted her teeth. She felt that the anger in her body had begun to gather. All she needed was an opportunity to burst out. She was really worried to death. Just as Yun Chujio felt that this time, the 3 puppets that were already riddled with injuries actually picked up the 3 treasured swords on the ground and said to the stunned Yun Chujio, "Sword. Array." The voices of the 3 puppets were unclear. Yun Chujio also guessed that they should be talking about the sword array. Yun Chujio's face was filled with confusion. However, when she saw the position of the 3 puppets, her heart trembled and she did not hesitate anymore. She asked the puppets number 4, number 5, and Meng Yanshou to join in, and she took the position of the pivot. Zhao Hui and the others realized that Yun Chujio and the puppets were using the 7-star sword formation, and they were completely confused. Putting aside whether these puppets knew how to use the sword formation or not, even if they knew how to use it, so what? Didn't they not use the 7-star sword formation before, but it was still useless? Of course, a few thoughts flashed through their minds. Those 3 puppets could actually speak? that seemingly useless rabbit actually knew how to use a sword? Of course, these thoughts were fleeting. This was because they and the other spiritual pets still had to deal with the enemies that kept charging at them, so they did not have the time to think about it. The silver-masked man and those people wearing black masks did not take the sword formation formed by Yun Chuzhou and the puppet seriously. Wasn't it just the 7-star sword formation? What was so great about it? However, when the sword formation was activated, they were shocked to discover that it did not seem to be the 7-star sword formation. This was because its power was several times stronger than the 7-star sword formation. Not only did the power of the attack increase greatly, the main reason was that the defensive ability was too monstrous. There was actually not the slightest flaw that could be used to attack. The entire sword formation was like a malignant star that reaped the lives of people. In an instant, it had already killed dozens of people. This was also because the puppets did not know fatigue at all, and the Nightmare Beast and Yun Chuzhou were both monstrous. The power of the sword formation was magnified several times. The Silver Man's original calm had also disappeared. At this time, half of their troops had already died. If this stalemate continued, they might really let these people escape. Therefore, he immediately commanded a portion of his men to surround and capture Li Zhuangji and the others. He planned to capture Li Zhuangji and the others as hostages so that he was not afraid that Yun Chuzhou would not give in. Chapter 4022. What were those things? Yun Chuzhou was so smart that she immediately discovered the silver-masked man's intentions. She immediately commanded the sword formation to break out of the encirclement and protect Li Zhuangji and his spiritual pets. At this moment, Meng Yanqi's treasured sword broke due to excessive force. Yun Chuzhou suddenly recalled her several immortal swords and immediately summoned them, handing them over to Meng Yanqi and the 5 puppets. It was rare for these immortal swords to come out for a breather. Naturally, they went all out, displaying the might of their immortal swords. With the immortal swords, the power of the 7-star sword formation increased by a lot. Yun Chuzhou immediately shouted at Li Zhuangji and the others, "Retreat to the seaside." Although Li Zhuangji and the others were worried about Yun Chuzhi's safety, they knew that if they were caught by the other party, they would be in a passive position. Therefore, they retreated while fighting, retreating towards the seaside. The silver-masked man was so anxious that he clenched his teeth. Unfortunately, Yun Chuzhou and the other 7-star sword formation was really difficult to deal with, and it forcefully slowed down their footsteps. Finally, before Yun Chuzhou was exhausted, everyone arrived at the seaside. The fishermen had long been scared away. They had low spiritual power, so how could they dare to get involved in such a thing? Li Zhuangji called out the big ship, and everyone boarded the big ship and quickly headed towards the deep sea. The silver-masked man was flustered and exasperated as he waved a few palms at the big ship that had gone far away. However, it was useless. They had thought that the ambush was foolproof and did not prepare the ship at all. Now, they could only watch as Yun Chuzhou and the others escaped. "Sir, you don't have to be anxious. They can't keep floating on the sea. They will find a way to get ashore. When the time comes, we can kill them. Besides, we can use this time to dispatch ships and men. We can chase after them and kill them when the time comes," a subordinate said. The silver-masked man felt that what his subordinate said made sense. He could totally mobilize his men and ships to chase after them. Because there were high-level demon beasts in the deep sea, Yun Chuzhou and the others had nowhere to run. As it was forbidden to use talismans here, he immediately sent his men to mobilize his men. However, he felt a little uneasy. He had lost hundreds of men this time. If he still couldn't kill Yun Chuzhou in the end, Elder One might not spare him. Therefore, Yun Chuzhou must die. 2 days later, another 300 people rushed over with ships. The subordinate who had delivered the letter earlier said to the silver-masked man with some apprehension, "Sir, the higher-up said that if you can't kill Yun Chuzhou this time, you don't need to return to the sect." The silver-masked man gritted his teeth. He had long expected Elder One to be furious. Fortunately, He had enough confidence that he could kill Yun Chujio. Immediately, everyone split into 3 large ships and chased after Yun Chujio and the others. 2 days later, someone exclaimed, "Look, isn't that Yun Chujio's ship in front of us?" "Haha, they're dead meat this time." The silver-masked man sneered. "Let's see where you can run to this time." Just as he was thinking, he heard Yun Chujio's clear voice coming from the opposite ship. "Hey, that unspeakable thing. I'm warning you, either get lost or die. Choose." The silver-masked man was so angry that he gritted his teeth. What did she mean by shameful thing? At this time, this stupid girl still refused to admit it. She was really courting death. Immediately, the silver-masked man commanded the 3 large ships to move forward at full speed. This time, they had no way to escape. However, at this moment, a subordinate shouted in horror. Then, "What are those things?" The silver-masked man looked in the direction of the voice and saw many black dorsal fins suddenly appearing in the seawater in all directions. Chapter 40:23 Shark Attack. The silver-masked man's face immediately turned pale. Yes, it's a level 64 bloodthirsty iron-skinned shark. Why are there so many level 64 bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks gathered here? Retreat. Retreat now. The silver-masked man couldn't care less about Yun Chujio and the others now. Besides, there were so many level 64 bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks. Yun Chujio and the others had no way to survive. However, he soon realized that he was wrong. That was because he heard Yun Chujio shouting clearly, "Little guys, go. Eat them." Following Yun Chujio's voice, those level 64 bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks actually swam towards their 3 ships. Yun Chujio could actually command a group of sharks? How? How is this possible? As the blood tree had just been destroyed, the sea beasts had not returned from the deep sea, so the sharks could only eat half their fill for the past few days. Now that they saw the silver-masked man and the others, they naturally cried out in excitement. Yun Chujio stood on the big ship and commanded the sharks, "Single Eye, knock their ship over first. When they fall into the water, they will be at your mercy." When the Single Eye sharks heard the name Single Eye, they could not help but freeze. However, they still followed Yun Chujio's instructions and ordered the sharks to crash into the 3 big ships. Although the silver-masked man and the others were not bad on land, how could they be a match for the bloodthirsty iron-skinned sharks in the sea? Soon, the 3 big ships were overturned into the sea. The sharks swarmed up, and in a moment, the sea surface was dyed red with blood. Even though the silver-masked man and the others were enemies, Li Zhuangji and the others still felt goosebumps when they saw this bloody scene. They couldn't help but feel a lingering fear. If junior sister Tianyan hadn't persuaded the sharks a few days ago, they would probably have ended up like this. The silver-masked man struggled in the water. He simply regretted it. If he had known that Yun Chujio could command the sharks, he would have set up an ambush by the sea. Sooner or later, he would have killed them. It was too late to regret now. The silver-masked man and the others were not good at fighting in the water. In addition to the large number of sharks, they were all dead after 2 hours. Compared to the shock of Li Zhuangji and the others, Yun Chujio's expression was very calm. In this world, the strong preyed on the weak. This was nothing out of the ordinary. After Yun Chujio greeted the one-eyed shark, she returned. "We have to hurry. If Elder One finds out that there's still no news from the group of people he sent, he might send more people over. We have to pass through that no-fly zone as soon as possible," Yun Chujio said solemnly. Li Zhuangji and the others were now obedient to Yun Chujio's words, so they naturally had no objections. Moreover, they had learned their lesson. Even though they were very curious about Yun Chujio's many secrets, they were tactful and did not ask about it. Yun Chujio also pretended that nothing had happened because she had already calculated that when they were about to reach the sect, she would let the Meng Yanshou weave a dream for them and push the blame onto Shui Wuji and Infeng. Anyway, it was not like she had not saved her before. However, when she thought of the 3 newly made puppets, she was very suspicious. How could these three puppets have modified the seven-star sword formation? Could it be that they learned it when they saw the drifters fooling around in the sword pool? This was also possible. After all, puppet number 4 and puppet number 5 could also use it according to the rules after they had seen it a few times. There was no choice. She was smart, so the puppets that were separated from her divine sense were naturally very smart. Chapter 40-24. Although Yun Chujio couldn't wait to take out the three puppets and ask them about it, due to Zhao Hui and the others, she just needed to endure it for a while and prepare to study it after she returned to the sect. The group arrived at the beach at the fastest speed, and then they passed through the no-fly zone without stopping. When they boarded the flying spirit tool, they finally let out a sigh of relief. Moreover, Yun Chujio was extra cautious. She did not ride on the flying spirit tool with the sect's logo, but on an ordinary flying spirit tool. This guy's carefulness helped them to avoid another wave of ambush, because Elder One was fully prepared this time. He even prepared a group of people along the way to prevent Yun Chujio and the others from escaping. However, they didn't expect that Yun Chujio and the others didn't ride on the flying spirit tool with the sect's mark, so they let Yun Chujio and the others pass through the ambush area. They were about to reach the sect. Li Zhuangji gnashed his teeth and said, "My father has always been loyal to Elder Wan. I didn't expect him to send people to kill us. This is outrageous. When we return to the sect, I will make my father report to the sect leader to punish Elder Wan for murdering his fellow disciples." Yun Chujio looked at him as if she was looking at an idiot. "Do you think it will work? We were almost bitten to death by the king of fire spiritual beasts back then. In the end, didn't we just let it go? Not to mention that Lu Zhong is already dead. Even if we bring him to the sect leader, Elder One will remove himself completely. His henchmen will even bite back and say that we are slandering him." Li Zhuangji clenched his fist. "I don't believe it. Don't tell me that the testimony of so many of us is still not credible." Yun Chujio sneered. "So, what if we have so many people?" Back then, as the sect leader's personal disciple, didn't Marshal Uncle Zhang also have to suffer an unjustified injustice? Without sufficient strength, even the most conclusive evidence would be wiped out. Where do you think those people who robbed and killed us came from? It was obvious that it was a force that Elder One had privately nurtured. If he had such a large force outside the sect, wouldn't he be able to cover the sky within the sect? Do you think that the sect leader would fall out with Elder Wan because of us little shrimps? Every time Yun Chujio said this, Li Zhuangzi's face turned paler. Then what should we do? Don't tell me that we can only swallow this? Don't make any moves and take things slowly. We insist that we have been ambushed by the divine Devil Hall, so all the plans that he had prepared have fallen through. Then, we will let your father and Elder Wan continue to feign civility with each other. Elder One can't get to the bottom of it for the time being, so he won't make any moves for the time being. We will think of a way to erode his power, and the final attack will hit." Yun Chujio said slowly. Zhao Hui reminded her from the side, "Junior sister Yun, when Lu Zhong attacked us on the sea, the number of people increased by hundreds. He probably sent people from other places. Maybe Elder One already knows that we've exposed Lu Zhong's identity. Why would he believe our story?" Yun Chujio smiled lightly and said, "I didn't want him to believe it at first. I just wanted him to wander around and buy time for us." Manager Li had followed Elder One for many years and knew a lot about him. Then he would think of a way to join hands with the sect leader. In time, he would definitely be able to uproot Elder One's power. Zhao Hu's mind was flexible, and he understood Yun Chujio's meaning. As for Li Zhuangji and the others, they were all confused. Fortunately, they now firmly believed in Yun Chujio and immediately nodded in agreement. Chapter 40-25. Self-confession. When they were about to reach the sect, Yun Chujio secretly knocked Zhao Hui and the others unconscious. Then, she had the nightmare beast weave a dream for them, making them think that they had been saved by Shui Wuji and in foam. After Zhao Hui and the others woke up, Yun Chuzhou strengthened the story again. Although the 6 of them felt that something was strange, they still accepted the dream that Meng Yanshou had woven for them. Finally, the flying spirit tool arrived outside the Nameless Sword Sex Mountain Gate. When the crowd saw the Nameless Sword Sex plaque, their eyes suddenly heated up. They had finally returned. The 7 of them did not go to the bounty hall. Instead, they went straight to the meeting hall. They did not expect to meet Elder Wan, who had rushed over. Li Zhuangzi's body suddenly tensed up. Yun Chuzhou glared at him before he lowered his head and suppressed his anger. When Elder Wan learned that Yun Chuzhou and the other 3 had returned to the sect, he was both shocked and angry. Only then did he rush to the meeting hall. He swept a warning glance at the 7 of them before walking into the meeting hall. Yun Chuzhou and the other 3 could not enter directly. Instead, they could only enter after being informed by the disciples. After obtaining permission, Yun Chuzhou and the other 3 entered the meeting hall. Master Ouyang asked with some confusion, "You said that you have something to report. What is it?" Zhao Hui and the others did not say anything. This kind of work that required eloquence naturally had to be handed over to Yun Chuzhou. Yun Chuzhou said with an expression of lingering fear, "Master, we were ambushed on the way back from completing our mission. Moreover, the other party clearly had a premeditated plan. If it wasn't for our great fortune, we would have died hundreds of times." The most infuriating thing was that the mastermind was actually Yun Chuzhou. Looked at Elder Wan as she said this. Elder Wan was already prepared. He snorted coldly, "Yun Chuzhou, you have to pay attention to the evidence when you speak. What right do you have to say that I sent people to kill you?" Yun Chuzhou looked at him in shock and said, "Elder Wan, I didn't say that you were the mastermind. Why are you in such a hurry to deny it? Could it really be you who did it?" Elder Wan gritted his teeth in frustration. He was too surprised that Yun Chuzhou and the others had returned safely, so he was a little flustered. What was the difference between this and admitting it without beating them up? However, this stupid girl had underestimated him. No matter how glib her tongue was, even if he refused to admit it, she would not be able to shake his position. Just as he was about to defend himself, he heard Yun Chuzhou say, "I did not expect the mastermind to be the divine Devil Hall. They sent hundreds of people to kill us. If it was not for my fiancé's men who arrived, we would not have survived." Elder One did not expect Yun Chuzhou to say that. He even suspected that the information he received was fake. Could it be that Yun Chuzhou and the others did not discover Lu Zhong's identity? Lu Zhong had lied to him? Elder One was shocked and uncertain for a moment, so he did not interrupt. He listened to Yun Chuzhou's vivid narration of what happened. Master Ouyang had been through a lot. After seeing Elder One's previous performance, he had some doubts about Yun Chuzhou's words. However, he did not say it out loud. He just followed Yun Chuzhou's words and asked for some details. Then, he said that he would inform the other forces about this matter and work together to find clues about the Divine Devil Hall. Finally, Master Ouyang waved his hand, indicating that Yun Chuzhou and the others could leave. Yun Chuzhou and the others immediately left the meeting hall and went to the bounty hall to hand in their tasks. Chapter 40-26. A puppet showing off. After handing in the mission, they went to a quiet place. Yun Chuzhou then said to Li Zhuangzi, "Go back and tell your father the truth. I believe he will know what to do. Also, don't tell outsiders about the Blood Sand Island. Otherwise, there will be more trouble." Everyone hurriedly nodded and then dispersed. Yun Chuzhou strolled back to her courtyard. She thought that she would see the drifters when she opened the door, but she didn't expect to see nothing. Yun Chuzhou curled her lips and thought that the drifters probably knew that she wasn't here, so they didn't come to cause trouble. Yun Chuzhou took a shower and then went into the courtyard. She released the puppets number 6, number 7, and number 8 and was ready to ask them about the sword formation. However, the moment she released the 3 puppets seemed to have gone mad and were running around in the courtyard. They even went to the swing to play on it. Yun Chuzhou, were the 3 puppets crazy? Yun Chujio quickly used her spiritual sense to order them to come back. However, it was useless. Puppet number 6 even shook its, but as if it was showing off to Yun Chujio. It almost angered Hei Shinjio to death. Was this a rebellion? Yun Chujio immediately stood up from the stone bench and walked toward puppet number 6, who was showing off with a gloomy face. However, in the next moment, she was stunned to see the 3 puppets minding their own business. She took out their puppet discs from the drive shell and released wisps of red mist from the puppet discs to wrap around the 3 puppet discs and run away. Yes, run away. Yun Chujio was instantly petrified. After a while, she gritted her teeth and said, "What the fuck is going on?" She recalled the incident where the 3 puppets knew how to use the sword formation. It was probably the doing of those drifters. However, she had to admit that those drifters had saved her life. Thinking about it, she could spare them for now. After all, there was still a long time ahead, and she had plenty of time to deal with them. Yun Chujio comforted herself. The main reason was that the drifters' headquarters were in the sword pool. Even if she wanted to settle the score with them, she couldn't do anything about it. Just as she was thinking about it, the drifters hopped in again. However, the 3 puppet discs were missing. They had probably been sent back to the sword pool. Yun Chujio couldn't be bothered with them and allowed them to hop on the swing. She sorted out what had happened recently. She didn't know the origin of the blood tree, but the death of such an evil thing was naturally a good thing. If Manager Li knew that Elder One had robbed and killed Li Zhuangji, he would definitely join Master Ouyang. Sooner or later, Master Ouyang and Elder One would fight each other. Only by getting rid of Elder One could she feel at ease. However, as there were too many implications involved, she was afraid that they would not be able to come to blows for a while. Moreover, Elder One would definitely have other tricks up his sleeve. It was better for her to be more careful. After a few days, the bounty hall had another mission. This time, it was a mission to hammer the sword billet. Yun Chujio was not surprised by this. When she was selecting inner disciples, she had heard of this new rule. That was that inner disciples had to help hammer the sword billet at irregular intervals, and they were not allowed to refuse. However, Yun Chujio had never expected that she would be assigned to the #1 sword forging hall of the upper house. Wasn't that Elder Duanmus' sword forging hall? Logically speaking, the status of the sword forging hall of the upper house was extraordinary. Why would an amateur like her be assigned to help hammer the sword blanks? Although Elder Duanmu had performed well in the last inner disciple selection, she had heard that he had a good personal relationship with Elder Wan. There couldn't be any conspiracy, right? Chapter 4027. New mission. Just as Yun Chujio was feeling a little surprised, Li Zhuangji arrived. Ever since he returned from the Blood Sand Island, Li Zhuangji often came over to give Yun Chujio some spirit fruits and food. He almost shocked the other disciples. Didn't Li Zhuangji have a bad relationship with Yun Chujio previously? He even caused a ruckus in the discipline hall. Why was he so attentive now? How would they know that Li Zhuangji was paying off his debt? Every time he sent some spirit fruits, Yun Chujio would deduct some spirit stones from his loan slip. It wasn't easy for him either. Yun Chujio saw him coming over and asked, "Is Elder Duanmu one of Elder Wan's people?" Li Zhuangji shook his head. "I heard from my father that although the two of them have a good relationship, Elder Duanmu's mind is on forging the sword. Therefore, he doesn't participate in the fight between the sect leader and Elder Wan." Yun Chujio nodded. If that was the case, even if there was something fishy going on, Elder Duanmu would probably be kept in the dark. No matter what, since the mission had to be completed, she would go and take a look. Therefore, early the next morning, Yun Chujio strolled to the #1 sword forging hall of the upper house. This sword forging hall was much more imposing than Hall Master Zija's sword forging hall. There were even disciples guarding the door. The Prime Minister's former third-grade official. Although the 2 disciples guarding the door were also inner disciples, their eyes were almost fixed on their foreheads. They were very arrogant. After Yun Chujio explained the purpose of her visit, the 2 of them curled their lips. A half-baked person like you was actually sent to our upper house's sword forging hall? Isn't that ridiculous? Although the two of them said so, one of them still went in to pass the message. A moment later, that person said with some schadenfreude, Elder Duanmu said to let you go in through the back door and then go to the backyard to clean the sword. If you do it well, you will be considered to have completed the task. That person thought that Yun Chujio would be extremely embarrassed and angry after hearing that and would even argue with them. Who would have thought that Yun Chujio would immediately go to the back door with a smile and humming a song? What a joke. She was not stupid. It was much easier to clean a treasured sword than to hammer a sword billet. Only a fool would choose to hammer a sword billet. As for why Elder Duanmu did not allow her to hammer a sword billet, it was probably because of the old feudalism. He felt that women should not go near the weapon refining furnace. When Yun Chujio reached the back door, the disciple guarding the door had obviously received the notice. He did not ask any more questions and, directly, let Yun Chujio into the sword forging hall's backyard. Yun Chujio looked around and saw that although this was only the sword forging hall's backyard, it was very spacious and exquisite. There was even a rockery. Yun Chujio thought to herself, as expected of the sword forging hall of the upper house. It was indeed high-end and high-class. When she was looking around, she heard a cough. She looked up and saw Elder Duanmu looking at her with a straight face. Yun Chujio bowed with a smile. Greetings, Elder Duanmu. I'm here to do a mission. Elder Duanmu nodded coldly. Logically speaking, you should be assigned to the sword forging hall in the lower or middle court. Perhaps something went wrong with the bounty hall, which is why you were assigned to me. However, since you're here, I won't make things difficult for you. Wipe the treasure sword in the storeroom. When the sun sets, you can go back. Yun Chujio hurriedly said, I understand. I promise to fulfill my duties. Elder Duanmu's expression was still very cold. He asked a disciple behind him to tell Yun Chujio what to do, then turned around and went to the front yard. Chapter 40:28 Sword Polishing. Yun Chujio asked the disciple with a smile, Thank you for your trouble, senior brother. May I know how to address you? The disciple had a good attitude. He smiled and said, Junior Sister Yun, you are welcome. I am Si Ping. Senior brother Si, please tell me what I need to do, Yun Chujio said politely. Si Ping nodded and opened the door of the warehouse. The moment the door opened, Yun Chujio could feel the biting cold air coming from inside. There were several treasured swords in the room. Although some of them still had stains from the forging process, it could still be seen that these treasured swords were of high quality. They were indeed worthy of being the treasured swords forged by the sword forging hall of the upper house. Si Ping pointed at the swords in the room and said, Junior Sister Yun, you only need to clean those stained swords. Don't miss anything. Be careful when you clean them. Don't hurt yourself. Yun Chujio felt that Si Ping was like a stream of fresh water in the sword forging hall, so she immediately thanked him. Si Ping just smiled and turned around to leave the room. However, a hint of sarcasm and viciousness flashed across his eyes. The reason why he specially emphasized wiping all the stained swords was to make Yun Chujio suffer. There was a sword in the room that could not be touched. It was the 1,000 Slashes sword that Elder Duanmu had painstakingly forged over the years. Logically speaking, such a precious sword should be kept alone. However, in order to make the sword sharper, Elder Duanmu had specially placed it in this warehouse to nourish it with other swords. Si Ping had already broken the sword previously, but he had used some things to stick it together. As long as Yun Chujio touched it, it would definitely break into 2 pieces. Elder Duanmu loved swords as much as his life. When that time came, he would be in a much better situation than Yun Chujio. It was possible for him to kill Yun Chujio in a fit of rage. Soon it was sunset. Si Ping suppressed the excitement in his heart and pushed open the warehouse door. He said with a smile, Junior Sister Yun, are you almost done cleaning it? Yun Chujio said with a smile, I'm just missing a few swords. Senior brother Si, wait for me for a moment. Si Ping immediately squatted down and helped Yun Chujio clean the swords. The two of them quickly finished cleaning the remaining swords. A trace of doubt flashed in Si Ping's eyes. This Yun Shujiu did not look guilty at all. Could it be that he had glued the swords too tightly? She did not break them? However, that did not matter. When the other senior brothers inspected them later, they would naturally discover the clues. When Yun Shujiu and Si Ping left the warehouse, two disciples immediately entered the warehouse to check. They only took a glance and saw that all the swords had been cleaned very cleanly. They immediately said to Elder Duanmu, "Elder, Yun Shujiu has done her duty. The swords have been cleaned very cleanly." Elder Duanmu nodded and was about to let Yun Shujiu leave, but Si Ping said unintentionally, "Elder, your 1,000-cleaving sword has been in the warehouse for a long time. Why don't you take it out and let us see it?" Elder Duanmu's originally cold expression immediately eased up a lot. He smiled slightly and said, "Take it out. If the nourishment is almost done, I can let that old thing Dongfang Qing see it for himself." Elder Duanmu spoke up to this point and glanced at Yun Shujiu. Yun Shujiu was dumbfounded. Why was she looking at her? What did he want to show off to Elder Dongfang have to do with her? Chapter 4029. The 1,000-cleaver sword is missing. How could this fellow know that ever since Elder Dongfang and Yun Shujiu returned from the Raging Flame Mountain Range, he often went to Elder Duanmu to brag about how outstanding Yun Shujiu was and how she had a bright future ahead of her, and how she treated him with great respect and so on. Elder Duanmu was not a fool. When he saw Elder Dongfang's expression, he knew that Yun Shujiu must have secretly given him the earth fire of the King Fire Spirit Beast. He could not help but feel a little envious and jealous. Therefore, when he heard Si Ping say that he would take out the 1,000-chopping sword, he gave Yun Shujiu a meaningful look. It was just to prove that he was much stronger than Elder Dongfang. It proved that Yun Shujiu was blind to actually curry favor with that old geezer Elder Dongfang. Yun Shujiu naturally did not know about Elder Duanmu's complicated thoughts. She stood at the side calmly and waited with a smile. Si Ping sneered in his heart. "You won't be able to laugh in a while. Soon." The disciple in charge of retrieving the sword ran out in a hurry. Elder, the 1,000-cleaver sword is missing." Elder Duanmu was stunned at first, then he flew into a rage. "What? You're talking nonsense. How could the 1,000-cleaver sword disappear without a trace?" As Elder Duanmu spoke, he rushed into the storeroom, but he could not find the 1,000-cleaver sword even after rummaging around. Everyone was dumbfounded. Their #1 sword forging hall not only had special guards, but Elder Duanmu's residence was in the backyard. Who would have the guts to steal the 1,000-cleaving sword? At this moment, Si Ping looked at Yun Shujiu in disbelief. "Junior sister Yun, don't make a huge mistake because of a moment of greed. Hurry up and hand over the 1,000-cleaving sword. I will plead with the elders on your behalf." Yun Shujiu looked at Si Ping's performance and could not help but praise him. This Si Ping was really good at acting. If she had not discovered that the so-called 1,000 executioner sword had been tampered with, she would have really regarded this Si Ping as a good person. She looked at Si Ping in confusion. "Senior brother Si, what do you mean by this?" Si Ping sighed. "Junior sister Yun, at this time, are you still going to deny it? You are the only outsider in the sword forging hall, and you have the opportunity to come into contact with the 1,000 swords. If you didn't steal the 1,000 swords, the 1,000 swords wouldn't have disappeared without a trace?" Yun Shujiu widened her eyes. "Io, are you trying to extort people? I'm here to do a mission, not to take the blame for others. It's obvious that someone stole the sword and then used tricks to get me to come here to do a mission. They even specially asked me to clean the sword. They are trying to pin the blame on my weak body." "Oh right, senior brother Si, you coincidentally mentioned that you wanted to see the 1,000 executioner sword. Isn't that a little too suspicious? Could it be that you're the one who stole it?" Si Ping was momentarily stunned by Yun Shujiu's words. How did she know all of this? Although it was a little off, it wasn't far from the truth. She was simply inhuman. However, he quickly reacted. He said angrily, "Junior Sister Yun, I was kind enough to make you repent, but you retaliated. Since that's the case, Elder, get someone to search Junior Sister Yun's body. She must have stolen the Thousand Executioner's sword." The veins on Elder Duanmus' forehead were popping up. He had hoped to use the Thousand Executioner's sword to make Elder Dongfang admit defeat, but now he had lost it out of the blue. One could imagine how angry he must be. However, he was experienced and felt that what Yun Chujio said was reasonable. All of this was too coincidental. Besides, why would Yun Chujio steal a treasured sword for no reason? Chapter 40:30 Molten Sword. Powder. Si Ping had more or less guessed Elder Duanmus' thoughts. He rolled his eyes and said, "Elder, this Yun Chujio is very close to Elder Dongfang. Perhaps she used such a sinister method to make it impossible for you to compete with Elder Dongfang." Si Ping's words hit Elder Duanmus' heart. He immediately looked coldly at Yun Chujio and said, "Yun Chujio, you'd better tell the truth. If I find out that you're lying, even the sect leader won't be able to protect you." Yun Chujio also sneered. "Elder Duanmu, you've always been the senior that I admire. I didn't expect that you couldn't even see through such a despicable trick. You've really disappointed me. First, I'm not Elder Dongfang's disciple. Why would I take such a big risk to steal a treasure sword? If I had the time, I might as well give him some earth fire from a king-level fire spirit beast. Secondly, I'm not mentally ill. If I did such a stupid thing, wouldn't I be waiting for you to teach me a lesson? Thirdly, did I take the initiative to come here to do a mission? Did I take the initiative to wipe the sword? Obviously, all of this was planned. If you want to find the Thousand Cleaver sword, why don't you capture the person that the bounty hall arranged for me to do a mission and interrogate him? Of course, if someone intentionally suggested that you let me come over to clean the sword, there's a high chance that I was involved. Of course, in order to prove my innocence, I'm willing to accept a body search. Here, this is my storage ring. Feel free to search." As Yun Chujio spoke, she took off the storage ring on her hand and handed it to Elder Duanmu. Elder Duanmu didn't know whether to search or not. He had to admit that what Yun Chujio said made sense. She really didn't need to take the risk to steal the Thousand Cleaver sword. He recalled what had happened that morning. When he heard that Yun Chujio had been sent to pound the sword, he had casually said that it was nonsense. Si Ping had suggested that Yun Chujio go to the backyard to clean the sword. Could it be that Si Ping had planned all of this? Elder Duanmus' gaze fell on Si Ping. Although Si Ping was very nervous, he still pretended to be calm. After all, he had not stolen the Thousand Cleaver sword. Even if Elder Duanmu suspected, he would not be able to convict him. Therefore, he smiled bitterly and said, "Elder, I have suffered an undeserved disaster. Please search me too." Yun Chujio immediately sneered and said, "Who knows which master you have given the Thousand Slaying sword to? Elder Duanmu will naturally not be able to find anything. Elder Duanmu, think about whether Si Ping has done anything strange recently. Maybe we'll find some clues." Si Ping was so angry that he gritted his teeth. He really didn't expect Yun Chujio to be so sharp-tongued. Every word pierced into his heart, making him unable to refute. A disciple behind Elder Duanmu said hesitantly, "Elder, I have something to report." "Speak." Elder Duanmu said coldly. "Elder, 2 nights ago, I was supposed to guard the weapon refining furnace, but Senior Brother C took the initiative to ask me to guard it. I was lazy and agreed. However, the next day, I found this at the edge of the furnace. At that time, I didn't take it seriously, but now it seems a little strange." As the disciple spoke, he took out a small paper bag from his storage ring. There were a few tiny black objects inside. Elder Duanmus' eyes suddenly flashed with a cold light. He recognized those tiny black objects. They were molten sword powder. As the name implied, molten sword powder could speed up the melting speed of a treasured sword. In addition, If one wanted to cut a treasured sword easily, one only needed to heat the treasured sword and sprinkle it with molten sword powder. Then, the treasured sword would be cut in half. Chapter 4031 Trying to Trick Her? Dream on. Elder Duanmu looked coldly at Si Ping. He had once told his disciples that although the molten sword powder had a quick effect, it would damage the quality of the forged sword and forbid anyone from using it. Now that Si Ping had secretly used the molten sword powder, it was obvious that he had ulterior motives. When he thought of what Yun Chuzhou said about the master behind the scenes, he could not help but feel a chill down his spine. Could it be that Si Ping was a spy from another faction? Take him down and call the discipline hall to interrogate him. Elder Duanmu shouted sternly. Si Ping had never dreamed that things would suddenly turn out like this. After his usual observation, he felt that Elder Duanmu hated Yun Chuzhou very much. Logically, he should have suspected Yun Chuzhou more. Why was he convicted just based on the molten sword powder now? Si Ping gritted his teeth. Now, he could only avoid the worst. He knelt on the ground and cried, "Elder, I'm wronged, I'm wronged. I admit that I secretly tried to use the molten sword powder to forge the sword, but it was only out of curiosity. I really didn't steal the 1,000-cleaver sword." Before Elder Duanmu could say anything, Yun Chuzhou said from the side, "Tis, that sounds nice. Maybe you melted Elder Duanmu's 1,000-cleaver sword. How vicious. Don't you know that Elder Duanmu loves swords like his life? You're trying to take Elder Duanmu's life. You shameless bastard. You even tried to frame me." Fortunately, Elder Duanmu is very observant. Otherwise, I would have been ruined by you. Elder Duanmu almost spat out a mouthful of blood when he recalled that the 1,000-cleaver sword that he had spent so much effort to forge had actually been melted into molten iron. He immediately waved his hand and said, "Take it away, and tell the discipline hall to use all means to make him tell the truth." Si Ping's head buzzed. Use all means? He was afraid that his life would be worse than death. Although he was still wailing, he was still taken away by 2 disciples. Yun Chuzhou felt that she should retire after her success, so she said with a smile, "Well, Elder Duanmu, I'm sorry for your loss. I'll take my leave first." Elder Duanmu glared at her and warned, "You'd better not play any tricks. If I find out that you're involved in this, I won't forgive you." Yun Chuzhou looked wronged and said, "Elder Duanmu, I'm already suffering from this undeserved disaster, and you're still trying to scare me. It's so disappointing." After saying that, she covered her face and ran away. Her shivering little back made people feel extremely miserable. Elder Duanmu snorted in embarrassment and looked at the disciple who reported Si Ping before. "Since you've made up for your mistakes, I won't pursue your dereliction of duty. Take care of yourself." The disciple immediately agreed with tears of gratitude, and then heaved a sigh of relief. He had been hesitant to report Si Ping, but seeing Yun Chuzhou's calm expression, he felt that Si Ping would definitely suffer. He might as well take this opportunity to report Si Ping so that he would not be implicated in the future. Now, it seemed that he had made the right bet. Even if he did not report Si Ping, Elder Duanmu might have suspected Si Ping. Coupled with Yun Chuzhou's encouragement, Si Ping would be in trouble sooner or later. On the other side, He Xinzhou covered her face and left the sword forging hall. After running for a while, she loosened her grip and curled her lips. Was she trying to trick her? In her dreams, the 1,000 slaying swords that had been broken into 2 had long been thrown into the great void mystic realm by this fellow. Even if Elder Duanmu really wanted to search him, he would not be able to find him. As for the master behind Si Ping, it was most likely Elder Wan. Of course, it could also be Tower Master Luochen. However, this had nothing to do with her. Perhaps Si Ping would soon be silenced. He deserved it. Chapter 4032 was a disguised gift as expected. The next day, Yun Chuzhou heard the news that Si Ping had committed suicide in the discipline hall. Yun Chuzhou curled the corners of her lips. It seemed that the other party was quite afraid of Elder Duanmu and was afraid that he would be found out. In that case, she had to win Elder Duanmu over. At the critical moment, if he and Elder Dongfang worked together, they could save her little life. Therefore, He Xinzhou hopped to the #1 sword forging hall of the upper house. The two disciples who were guarding the door were still looking at her arrogantly. Didn't you finish your mission yesterday? Why are you here again? Is this where you should be? Leave now, or don't blame us for being rude. Yun Chuzhou ignored them and shouted while stretching her neck, Elder Duanmu, Elder Duanmu. The two gatekeeping disciples wished they could shut her mouth. If they disturbed Elder Duanmu while he was forging his sword, they might be angry. Therefore, the two of them came over to drive Yun Chuzhou away in a huff. However, Yun Chuzhou had just been driven away for some distance. When they were not paying attention, she would jump back and continue to stretch her neck and shout, Elder Duanmu, Elder Duanmu. Elder Duanmu was not deaf. After a few times, he walked out of the courtyard with a solemn expression. Yun Chuzhou, why are you shouting here? Yun Chuzhou immediately came over and said mysteriously, Elder Duanmu, I have a few questions regarding the king-level fire essence beast. May I have a word with you? Come in with me. If Yun Chuzhou said something else, Elder Duanmu would definitely ignore her. However, when he heard that it was about the king-level fire essence beast, his interest was immediately piqued. Therefore, Yun Chuzhou followed Elder Duanmu into the sword forging hall with a smile. The two guards who were guarding the door felt as if their hearts were going to explode. After a while, they finally let Yun Chuzhou in. What did they want? Elder Duanmu led Yun Chuzhou to the backyard and asked with a gloomy expression, What question do you want to ask? It was not Elder Duanmu's fault for not looking good. The main reason was that he had just learned that Si Ping had committed suicide this morning. Of course, he knew that it was not as simple as committing suicide, but he did not have any other clues. It was like a fishbone stuck in his throat. Yun Chuzhou took out a foil bucket from her storage ring and placed it on the ground. Elder Duanmu, the quality of the earth fire essence beast that I collected this time is not very stable. If you have time, please help me see what is going on. My stomach suddenly hurts a little. Please do your work first. I'll come and ask for your advice another day. After Yun Chuzhou sent him off, she didn't wait for Elder Duanmu to react. She clutched her stomach and slipped out of the back door. Elder Duanmu took a while to recover before he realized that this little girl had come to deliver a gift in disguise. Elder Duanmu snorted coldly. It wasn't too late for her to realize that he was much stronger than that old bastard Dongfang Cheng. With this conclusion, Elder Duanmu's originally gloomy expression became a little better. This was because he could predict that in the future, he would be able to obtain an additional portion of the king-level fire essence beast's earth fire every month. This way, he could forge a high-quality sword. After Yun Chuzhou left the #1 sword forging hall, she ran to the #2 sword forging hall to get in touch with Elder Dongfang. After that, she strolled to the sword pool. Manager Li had already heard what happened from Li Zhuangji. Although he didn't want to get too close to Yun Chuzhou because of Elder Wan, he didn't stop Yun Chuzhou from approaching the sword pool. Chapter 40-33 The reason why the drifters disappeared. Yun Chuzhou strolled to the edge of the sword pool. During this period of time, the entire sect had been helping the sword forging hall forge swords, so the number of swords in the sword pool had increased quite a bit, although it couldn't be compared to before. At least it didn't look so shabby anymore. Yun Chuzhou could vaguely see a corner of the 3 puppet discs in the middle of the layers of swords. She was furious. Although the drifters had saved her, they were too stubborn. Were they planning to take over the 3 puppet discs completely? There weren't many drifters in the sword pool. Most of them had probably gone to her courtyard to wreak havoc. The drifters who were guarding the sword pool saw Yun Chuzhou coming over and drifting in the sword pool. Even though they didn't say anything, Yun Chuzhou could feel that they were provoking her. Yun Chuzhou gritted her teeth and thought to herself, just you wait. Sooner or later, I will teach you guys a lesson. When Yun Chuzhou left the sword pool and returned to the courtyard, she indeed saw the drifters playing on the swings in the courtyard. Yun Chujio ignored them and went straight into the house. Unexpectedly, at night, Buttface ran in and shouted, little fairy, those drifters suddenly disappeared again. Yun Chujio frowned and went to the courtyard. Sure enough, the courtyard was empty. The drifters who couldn't be chased away every day had disappeared. Where did they go? While Yun Chujio was thinking, Buttface muttered, I remember that the last time the drifters disappeared, there was a full moon in the sky. Tonight, it's still a full moon. The days when these drifters disappeared are quite fixed. The speaker didn't mean it, but the listener did. Yun Chujio's heart stirred. A full moon? That's right. The last time the drifters disappeared was on a full moon. Could there be something to this? A full moon? It seemed that many things only happened on a full moon. For example, the sword shadow on the cliff at the Yun family's ancestral mausoleum. Yun Chujio's eyes suddenly lit up. Could the disappearance of these drifters have something to do with the sword shadow on the cliff? The sword shadows on the cliff walls would only appear on a full moon night, and these drifters would also disappear on a full moon night. She then thought of the human figures she had vaguely seen practicing the seven-star sword formation. Could it be that the human figures on the cliff walls were actually the incarnations of these drifters? If this deduction was true, then the nameless ancestral master probably did not build the sword pool back then just to let his disciples cultivate. He probably built it to conceal the killing intent. Furthermore, the nameless patriarch's cave abode was probably built to learn sword techniques on the one hand and to conceal the existence of the killing aura on the other. This nameless patriarch was really good at scheming. Then, where did the killing aura come from? She could not figure out this question no matter what. After all, she had too little information and she could not guarantee that the figures on the cliff were really those drifters. She had to think of a way to verify it. Therefore, the next day, when those drifters appeared in her courtyard again, Yun Chujio began to practice her sword. However, as she practiced her sword, she provoked the drifters. Hey, although you drifters know the seven-star sword formation, do you know this sword technique of mine? To tell you the truth, this sword technique of mine was learned from a mysterious place. It's not that I look down on you guys, but you guys float around all day and don't even have hands or feet. What the hell do you know? Yun Chujio's words clearly made the floating people choke with anger. Balls of red mist began to gather. Chapter 4034 was indeed them. Yun Chujio was still chattering nonstop, but her eyes were flashing with excitement. Oh my, there's a door. Finally, the red mist gathered to form a blurry figure. To be precise, it was not a person. At most, it was a blurry figure. Even the swords in their hands were formed from the red mist. Yun Chujio was very sure that this was the figure that appeared on the cliff, because the figure was the same. Just as Yun Chujio was thinking, the red figure stabbed at her. Yun Chujio was so scared that she quickly used the sword in her hand to block it. However, she forgot that the sword in the red figure's hand was the aura of slaughter. How could she be afraid of her treasured sword? Therefore, she could only use all her strength to dodge to the side. Before she could let out a sigh of relief, the second sword of the red figure stabbed at her again. The speed was so fast that it was suffocating. Yun Chujio did not dare to be careless anymore. Although these drifters had saved her, they still did not give up on finding a chance to enter the space between her eyebrows. She had to be careful. Fortunately, the red figure had a playful intention. It seemed to like seeing Yun Chujio dodge in a sorry state. It could have stabbed Yun Chujio, but it gave her a chance to dodge. Yun Chujio originally thought that her swordsmanship was not bad. After all, she spent all her time on swordsmanship when she was not practicing. However, compared to the red figure that the drifter had turned into, it was like the difference between a chicken and an eagle. They were not on the same level. Moreover, she did not know if it was because of a limitation of her spiritual power. She clearly knew how to break the red figure's swordsmanship, but she could not use it in time. Yun Chujio was forced into a sorry state by the red figure. Her body was soaked in sweat. If it were not for the Piaos deliberately toying with her, she would have died hundreds of times. However, Yun Chuzhou was able to hold on. Even though she was exhausted and her hand holding the sword was trembling, she still did not give up. The Piaos were very excited. In their limited consciousness, no one had played with them for a long time. It was still this little girl who forbade them from playing, unlike some of the trash they found in the past, who were either scared to death or knelt down and cried. It was so boring. Finally, Yun Chuzhou could not hold on any longer and collapsed on the ground. Even so, she did not forget to take out the relic and place it in front of her to prevent the drifters from taking advantage of it. The red figure was dancing not far away from her. It was obviously mocking her for overestimating herself. If it could make a sound, it would probably laugh until it died. Yun Chuzhou rolled her eyes. She couldn't be bothered with these idiots. However, she suddenly widened her eyes and pointed at the red figure with a trembling hand. She asked angrily, "If your sword techniques are so powerful, why didn't you use this sword technique when I was being chased? Why did you use the 7-star sword formation instead?" The dancing red figure immediately stopped dancing guiltily. Then, it turned into wisps of red mist and went to play on the swing without a care in the world. Yun Chuzhou glanced at them fiercely. She guessed that either these drifters were deliberately making fun of her, or they had some restrictions after leaving the nameless sword sect. They could only rely on the puppet disc. Yun Chuzhou thought of the figure on the cliff and thought of the worryless fish. Ever since she brought them into the great void mystic realm, she had not thought of eating them. It was such a pity. Hence, she secretly asked the ball of wool to make a few of them and stewed them in an alchemy furnace. Chapter 40-35 Eye of Sword Intent. While Foodie Joe was enjoying her meal, the sound of footsteps came from outside. This fellow quickly put the alchemy furnace into his storage ring and then took out a handkerchief to wipe his mouth. Yun Chuzhou looked at those drifters again and saw that those drifters had long slipped into the house. Yun Chuzhou cursed in her heart. Damn it, they actually reacted faster than her. They must have done a lot of bad things. There seemed to be something wrong with these words. Just as this guy was thinking about it, Li Zhuangzi's voice came from outside the door. "Junior Sister Yun, I brought you a spiritual fruit." Yun Chuzhou thought to herself that it was really not a good time to come. She quickly sent him away to continue eating the fish. Therefore, Yun Chuzhou walked to the gate of the courtyard. After opening the gate, she took the spiritual fruit from Li Zhuangzi's hand and said, "Senior Brotherly, if there's nothing else, you can go back. It's late. I want to sleep." Li Zhuangzi looked at the high sun hanging in the sky. The corner of his eyes twitched, and then he sniffed. Junior Sister Yun, what are you eating? Why does it smell so good?" Yun Chuzhou said casually, "Isn't it the seafood we bought in the Lost Sea? What else can be delicious?" Li Zhuangzi frowned. "That's not right. This is not the taste of the seafood. The taste is somewhat familiar." It seems. Li Zhuangzi suddenly widened his eyes and looked at Yun Chuzhou in disbelief. He lowered his voice and said, "It's worryless fish. This is the smell of worryless fish. Elder One once rewarded my father with one. This is the smell." Yun Chuzhou naturally would not admit it. She curled her lips and said, "What worryless fish? There are worryless fish. You've smelled it wrong. It's nothing. Hurry up and leave. I'm going to sleep." Li Zhuangzi was a person who liked to eat, drink, and have fun. How could he leave so easily? He immediately said obsequiously, "Junior Sister Yun, although we had some misunderstandings in the past, it's all because of my scoundrel senior brother. We can be considered to have experienced life and death. If you don't share the good food with senior brother, it would be too unkind." Yun Chuzhou clenched her teeth in anger. In the past, she thought that this Li Zhuangzi was an idiot. She did not expect him to be a foodie. However, she knew that she couldn't chase him away, so she could only close the door and take out the alchemy furnace from her storage ring. Li Zhuangzi's eyes lit up when he saw the carefree fish in the alchemy furnace. He didn't need Yun Chujio to let him go. He took out a bowl and chopsticks from a storage ring and started eating. Yun Chujio was furious. It turned out that he was shameless. She was afraid that Li Zhuangji would eat all of it, so she quickly picked up her chopsticks as well. Not long after, even the fish soup was finished by the two of them. Only then did Li Zhuangji realize that Yun Chuzhou actually used the alchemy furnace to stew the fish. Junior sister Yun, where did you get the worryless fish? Didn't you say that our sect's worryless fish is almost extinct? Li Zhuangji asked curiously. I picked it up, Yun Chuzhou said shamelessly. Li Zhuangji naturally didn't believe her, but fortunately, he was tactful. Seeing that Yun Chuzhou wasn't willing to say more, he didn't ask further. However, he made up his mind that he would have a good relationship with Yun Chuzhou in the future. The two of them chatted. Li Zhuangji sighed and said, Sigh, junior sister Yun, you may not know this, but the Eye of Sword Intent will open in half a month. Unfortunately, this has nothing to do with us. Yun Chuzhou asked in confusion, What is the Eye of Sword Intent? The Eye of Sword Intent? There are eyes in Sword Intent? Li Zhuangji looked at her speechlessly and explained, The Eye of Sword Intent is not the Eye of Sword Intent. It is a secret realm that opens once every 100 years. It is the dream opportunity for all sword practitioners. Chapter 4036. Junior sister Yun went crazy again when Yun Chuzhou heard that it was a secret realm. Her interest immediately waned. She didn't know how many secret realms she had entered, and the result was almost the same every time. It was nothing more than tidying up the weapon spirit inside and making a small fortune. Li Zhuangji saw that Yun Chuzhiou's interest was lacking. He immediately said with some excitement, Junior sister Yun, don't underestimate this Eye of Sword Intent. It is said that there is a sharp sword deep in the core of the earth in the Eye of Sword Intent. You can feel the majestic sword intent around it. In the Eye of Sword Intent, the probability of one comprehending sword intent is greatly increased. Every time someone comes out from the Eye of Sword Intent, they will be able to comprehend one type of sword intent. Some will even be able to comprehend two types of sword intent. Do you know what this means? Some people will never be able to comprehend sword intent in their entire lives. However, in the Eye of Sword Intent, they will be able to comprehend two types of sword intent at once. What kind of temptation is this? Hearing his words, Yun Chuzhou became very interested. Up until now, she had only comprehended the sword intent of chaos. If she could comprehend a few more types of sword intent, it would be very beneficial for her to increase her strength. Thus, she said lightly, since you said it so mysteriously, then I've decided to take a look. How do I sign up? Li Zhuangji looked at her speechlessly. Junior sister Yun, you're thinking too simply. In order to get a spot to go to the Eye of Sword Intent, all the major sects are fighting over it. How can we have a share? Yun Chuzhou frowned. No chance at all? What conditions do we need to go? The Eye of Sword Intent can only allow about 1,000 people to enter at a time. Because our Nameless Sword sect is famous for our sword, our Nameless Sword sect has 200 spots. If you want to go, you must at least rank in the top 100 on the Proclamation of Azure Sky, because the successive disciples and elders still need to occupy about 100 spots. In a few days, the inner sect would have a monthly competition. This time, the competition for the top 100 would definitely be very fierce. However, this had nothing to do with us, after all. Our ranking is too low. Li Zhuangzi's tone was filled with envy and jealousy as he spoke towards the end. However, there was no other way. Although his ranking was higher than Yun Chuzhiou's, it was still beyond the top 1,000. Wanting to fight for the top 100 was practically a fool's dream. Yun Chuzhiou narrowed her eyes. She was definitely going to go to the Eye of Sword Intent. Wasn't it just the top 100? There was still hope if she thought of some derogatory moves. She looked at Li Zhuangji with a faint smile. Do you want to go to the Eye of Sword Intent? Li Zhuangji rolled his eyes. Was there a need to ask? All sword practitioners naturally wanted to go to the Eye of Sword Intent. The main thing was that he could not go. Yun Chuzhou smiled sinisterly. As long as you do as I say, not only you, but Chen Bufan and the others can also go to the Eye of Sword Intent. Li Zhuangji looked at Yun Chuzhou speechlessly. It was over. Junior sister Yun had gone crazy again. Chen Bufan and the others were worse than him. Go to hell. Yun Chuzhou blinked her eyes. Send a message to them and call them over. Although Li Zhuangji thought that Yun Chuzhou was talking nonsense, he didn't dare to disobey her. He immediately called Chen Bufan, Zhao Hui, and the others over. Yun Chuzhou coughed and said, So, do you want to go to the Eye of Sword Intent? If you want to go, then listen to me. I guarantee that you will all be qualified to go to the Eye of Sword Intent. Chen Bufan and the others widened their eyes. The first thought that flashed through their minds was the same as Li Zhuangzi's. Junior sister Yun, she had gone crazy again. Chapter 4037. Big Dipper Battle Team. Chen Bufan coughed dryly and said, Junior sister Yun, have you been feeling unwell for the past few days? It's better for you to rest early. We'll be going back now. Zhao Hui said from the side, Yes, junior sister Yun, you should rest well. We won't disturb you anymore. Yun Chuzhou snorted coldly and said, I'll only give you one chance. If you don't go, I'll find someone else. Anyway, there are plenty of inner sect disciples who want to go to the Eye of Sword Intent. Yun Chuzhou sat on the stone bench with a nonchalant look on her face. Li Zhuangji and the others looked at each other and thought about what had happened on the Blood Sand Island. Junior sister Yun had even destroyed the blood tree. Perhaps she could really get them into the top 100? Chen Bufan's chubby face suddenly smiled like a flower. Junior sister Yun, we are just joking with you. Do you have any way to get us into the top 100? Yun Chuzhou looked at the other people. They were all fawning. If they could get the opportunity to enter the Eye of Sword Intent, they would be willing to work as hard as they could. Yun Chuzhou lowered her voice and muttered to herself. Chen Bufan and the others' faces were stiff. Wasn't this a lie? Could this work? Wasn't this asking for a beating? However, in the end, they couldn't resist the temptation of the Eye of Sword Intent and accepted Yun Chuzhou's method with a bitter face. 3 days later, the monthly Inner Disciple competition began. As Li Zhuangji had expected, this time, there were several additional competition stages specially set up to facilitate the fierce competition for the top 100. The competition had a total of 3 days. 2 days ago, Yun Chuzhou, Zhao Hui, and the others didn't show up. Instead, they continued to stay in Yun Chuzhou's courtyard. On the last day of the competition on the various competition platforms became even more intense. The competition for the top 100 had reached a climax. Among the crowd watching the competition, Li Zhuangji and the others looked at each other bitterly. They struggled for a long time before they raised the banners in their hands. Soon, someone saw the banners they were holding. Someone read, "The Big Dipper Battle Team is invincible. We will crush the top 100 to pieces." Everyone was confused. What did that mean? Chen Bufan gulped. He braced himself and said, "Humph. You may not know this, but even though the 7 of us are not ranked very well, after we formed the Big Dipper Battle Team, our strength has greatly increased. Any team of 7 people in the top 100 would not be our match. If any of our fellow disciples in the top 100 don't believe us, they can form a battle team for us to challenge. If our Big Dipper Battle Team loses, we are willing to give the opponent 7 million high-grade spirit stones." Although Chen Bufan's words were loud and clear, in fact, his heart was filled with uncertainty. Could this work? Putting aside whether or not anyone would agree to form a battle team and challenge them, even if someone did agree, they would still lose. 7 million. That black-hearted junior sister Yun asked them to put their handprints on the new loan slip again. That's not right. They haven't lost yet. Why did they give her the loan slip first? Fuck, they got scammed again. Just as Chen Bufan was in a daze, The crowd exploded. Ha, this is hilarious. Are these people here to make a joke? Just them? The highest-ranked Li Zhuangji is only in the top 1,250, and he wants to challenge the top 100 disciples? I don't think they're here to make a joke. They must be out of their minds. Aren't they here to give people spirit stones? It's a pity that I'm ranked in the 500th place. Otherwise, I would definitely find a few fellow disciples with good relationships to form a battle team to deal with them. This is no different from picking up money. You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.